I would just like to make a move to amend the agenda for discussion point. The CDC recommendations given Thursday.
I don't think,
Yes, I think.
I'm not
The
sure what
CDC's
that's.
community COVID level.
Work just.
Yeah, it's after the agenda published. I'd like to finish in a second. So I move to amend the agenda to add a discussion point entitled CDC recommendations, community COVID level for the county. In order to read these recommendations and correct your math recommendations to allow staff and parents to make an educated decision regarding their own health and their children.
Are there any public comments?
I do the motion request for the second.
All right, any public comments? No public comments, all right, anybody have any communications? All right, the consent agenda, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? You all have the executive session meeting hard copy minutes there.
So moved.
Megan?
Oh, you want to read this first?
Everybody reading? All right. Motion to approve the consent agenda. Megan, I think moved it for a second.
Second.
All right, Julie? Would anyone like to discuss anything there? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Consent agenda is approved. Okay, into reports. So the first thing, I know Caroline, student representative, has prepared something for us tonight. So would you like to go first?
Hello, everybody. There hasn't been much going on since we had winter break after our last meeting, but there are some interesting things happening in the next few weeks at Tohoto that I'd like to share. One thing I'm super excited about is our first musical in, as far as I know, at least 6 years. So they have their auditions today, and I think they went really well. I'm excited to finally see the stage and our amazing talent be put to use. Another thing is that there's going to be a winter ball for high school on February 4th, and I'm glad to see more dances to make up for the ones that had to be canceled due to COVID. And then the last thing is there's a club called ACE Club, which Claire's the advisor of, and they are doing this exciting thing where they're having open tutoring sessions for middle schoolers and some underclassmen high school subjects. And I think that this is a great opportunity for students to get some help from a more relaxed environment and to get other people's perspectives on how to help them succeed in their studies. And I've also heard some people say that they appreciate the emails Superintendent Costello has been putting out about snow days. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm excited about all these new opportunities opening up in Tohoto. Thank you. Yeah.
Has the school chosen which musical they're gonna put on?
Yeah, it's Charlie Brown, Your Good Man Charlie Brown. Yeah, and I went pretty well. It's a lot of middle schoolers auditioning mostly, but there was a pretty good turnout. I think there was like 20, 30 people there for auditions today. So, pretty good.
That's amazing.
Is it,
Ted,
do you know if there's when the date is for that?
I think it's over Easter break, so I think it's April 7th and 8th, maybe? Or I think it's the Friday and Saturday before Easter. Yeah.
Great.
Anybody else have anything? All right, thank you very much. So we have an item to vote on for a overnight field trip. Is anyone here to discuss that from the students or? You guys? Is that you guys?
No, they're not here.
They're not here?
No, I do have, I have a little thing that they wrote up, if you'd like to.
Yeah. Well, we can send it to the vote. I thought they were here. We just
Oh,
wrote up to now, so we don't have to stick around for 3 hours. Yeah, we can cover that later. All right.
Okay.
What was that?
2 hours.
Well, we'll see. All right, cool. All right, so the next item is what we talked about in December, changing the meeting day. When we left in December, I said I'd talked with Carol about just the possibility of doing that right now. So the thing with that is there's 5 months left in this calendar after tonight. There's the 6 committee members, I think I counted 11 or 12 additional people who are required to be at these meetings from time to time, including Christie, including Sebastian, right? That's, I guess.
So, yeah.
Right. Who've all made, planned their weeks and their months and their days around it. To change it for the next 5 months right now is gonna be tough. It's gonna impact a lot of people, not just the people that come to the meetings, but everything those people have set up in their schedules to help support them to get to meetings on Tuesday. Like I know for me personally, I'm here on Tuesdays, so anything that happens with the kids or if my wife has a work thing or anything like that can't happen on Tuesdays, so she has to work around that. I'm sure everybody has something like that going on in their calendar, so it would just be incredibly tough to change it right now. But that doesn't mean that when we vote on the next calendar, which I believe we'll be doing in March, that we'll be working on that probably sometime around there this spring for next year. No reason we can't talk about changing the date then, changing the time. I wouldn't be against starting earlier because what is the school business hours? The day ends at what, like sometime between 3 and 4. I mean, I'm not opposed to having an earlier start time just to accommodate you folks who are actually employees. Waiting around 3 to 4 hours after your workday ends to then attend another 2, 3, 4 hour meeting, that makes for a pretty long workday. I get it. So I'm not opposed to doing that when the time comes to schedule that. But personally, I think in talking with Carol and I talked with Lori, I should have said this at the beginning, but Lori's not here tonight. She had some things going on, some deaths, some personal issues in her family. So if you guys could remember her tonight, whatever it is that you choose to do in those situations, if you want to do that later, that's why Lori's not here. But I did talk to her earlier. The other days available in the week right now, basically Wednesday or Thursday, just absolutely impossible for her. So to vote to change a day to fix one issue, I think it's just going to create too many more issues. So that being said, no reason it can't be changed when we get calendar for next year. And that gives everybody a full year in advance to plan and rearrange their next year's schedules around that. So if you guys have anything to say, feel free to say something.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. I mean, I know for me, my schedule is constantly changing,
Yeah.
season to season, I don't necessarily have it, so, every Tuesday is set for this, it could change month to month from
Yeah.
there. So I'd be flexible. I guess I would be able to move around. If somebody else absolutely cannot do Tuesday for a very specific reason that cannot be changed, I could work my schedule.
Yes.
That's me personally.
Everybody has something. I get it. Like I was telling Megan before we started here, I had something come up today that made it pretty tough to get here. There's a couple dozen people directly involved in being here. I mean, how many people are at the table right now? We don't have Paul. We don't have a few other people here right now, right? So there's a couple of factors beyond that. A couple dozen, probably somewhere around 50 people that would be directly impacted. Not to mention the meetings with other groups in town, other committees, especially the budget work that's going on. I know next week there's some Wednesday and Thursday meetings for, the budget and stuff. But next year, I'm not committed to Tuesdays other than the fact that my calendar right now is currently scheduled around Tuesdays. That's it.
So the only thing I would say is, I get February, we've already got the budget set in stone, and that's we've got a robust schedule in February, but I'm kind of like Julie, and again, I think we're both very fortunate in that our lifestyles afford us the ability to do that, and so I would be fine with changing the date mid-year, but again, I can't speak for all these people, and I don't want to attempt to, so I can see both sides of the situation, and it's just a tough situation, so.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. Bobby brought this up. I know at least 3 people on the committee have offered other ways to sort of help you out. So if you want to take advantage of that, please do. You don't have to, it's just stuff that's around. So,
Could we poll everybody? Is that it?
and there's like 50.
So we really do.
If they have to do it.
For next year, for the next year's calendar, yes. Like, for this year, I know in March, I've got a few things scheduled for work around these dates.
Okay.
April, my wife has a few things scheduled.
Well, I guess travel, you're right, yeah.
You know, I do travel for work quite a bit. you
Yep.
know. So that's just me. That doesn't include the other couple dozen people, you know. And we've got 14, 15 people just in the room now.
Mhm.
It's tough. I get it. Things come up. Like I said,
Right.
I had something come up today that I'm scrambling trying to get here, so. I don't know what to say other than that.
Yeah, I think the other huge point of contention, which I sensed last week, was Laurie said Thursday, no way.
Yeah.
And Jess said Wednesday, no way. So
Yeah.
that leaves 0 more.
Not impossible, but I certainly wouldn't be able to do the 6 p.m. right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and then it's just 2, yeah. So understandable.
but I think when we get to next year,
Rock and hard place.
and we can project it out for years, anybody,
Absolutely.
somebody, like, you know, I don't know how many people have 2 meetings beyond a year set in stone. I mean,
My
it's,
schedule comes at 3 months at a time, so that's my.
yeah, so if you had a year's notice of when the meetings are gonna be, you can work with that. Like, I can too. So, I don't need.
When's our last meeting? Do we know? What, so I know we got 2 in February. March, we've won. April, we probably only have 1, and then I think May.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't have
May is a little-
negotiations this year, but we have the evaluation.
With evaluation, yeah,
Easy.
we've got, the dates around town meetings are always flexible because we may need to do something. for
Right, with the budget this year, we'll probably, well, the town meeting will be Monday, so we'll probably need to meet.
Yeah, so it's things like that.
So it'll probably be it's probably 6 more, right? 2,
But yeah,
3,
no more
4,
than
5,
six,
6, or 7 tops. I know
I think
that's
it's only, there's 6 scheduled.
6 scheduled,
Because
right?
February is
We
2,
have 2 in February, we've got 1 every other month.
When does it count for year for meetings then?
June.
June.
But like last year, we negotiated right through the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the summer. Yeah, yeah.
Come, you know, the spring and March, whatever it is, we'll set the schedule for next year, for whether it's August or September start, whatever it's gonna be.
Perhaps the meetings in the summer if needed.
If, yeah, always if needed, yeah. We had some last summer because of the communications.
Which is, I think we did some Zoom too to make it easier. It was just like us.
Yeah, so that's what I have on that.
Appreciate you talking to Carol about it and getting things through. Just add that, when it came up in August, the thinking was similar, like, it would be tough to change this next month or the following month, people have plans. So I think the thought then was to kind of look out maybe around this time, where people could plan accordingly. So if the school committee does intend to make a shift to try to make accommodations for more people, let's not wait till spring to start talking about it, because we're gonna be in the same position as we are now.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Wait till next year.
Christie, when does that meeting typically take place? For, set the calendars?
So
March.
the school calendar is March, but the school committee meeting calendar isn't usually done until May. Or you can change it at any point. You can change it at any point.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I mean, either February is a lot going on with the budget, maybe we can do that in March too, get the calendars on at the same time. Okay, subcommittee reports, Megan?
So I don't want to step on Nancy's toes because I know she's going to be going into detail But we've been working on two things at our subcommittee meetings, and number one is the upcoming budget. So this past meeting, we just looked at the timeline, and again, I'm sure she's gonna discuss it because it was in the drive, and pretty much the gist of it is when we plan to meet with the different town groups. One thing I wanted to bring up to the school committee is we talked about how important it is to have a school committee presence at these meetings. So Julie and I are, trying to tackle Boylston, Berlin, but obviously Mike, and Jess and Bob, and I know it's tough, but Carol had a great idea of, trying to get out in front of the community as much as possible, coffee talks, just trying to get in front of different groups. And it would be really beneficial if school committee members could attend. So I am happy to take on a good chunk of Boylston stuff because I'm home during the day and I have a flexible schedule. I'm sure Laurie is going to feel the same way. Jess, I know you're working, but I think the big thing is getting the schedule out in front of the school committee members and seeing, we want to educate the population, the community on the budget. And the second thing that we have been working on slowly is cell service for this building. So right now, we're trying to reach out to somebody that had tried to do it in the past and get an update on that. But I just want to let the public know, anyone listening, it is on our radar and it is being discussed. And we're trying to see what we can do. But as of right now, I think this was mentioned before, the best way to get cell reception in this building without violating any laws would be to get a cell tower in the nearby vicinity.
I was curious if the safety of cell towers has been brought up.
Not with our committee, but that would obviously be something that we would have to look into. And essentially, it's gonna come down to the town's decision, is what I think, or whoever owns the land at the end of the day. It's not gonna be.
I attended the town meeting a few weeks ago, sorry, I'm blurred together. And there's a radio tower
Yes.
on Stiles Road, and the fear is that it would then turn into a cell phone tower. So I think that avenue should be explored.
Yes, and that is absolutely something, I just didn't wanna, looking into it definitely.
Anything else we can?
I don't think so, right?
No, I just wanted to add on to what you're saying, Megan, so we're working on that schedule for the days of meetings, PTOs, CPAC, student counts, school councils and so on. And we'll have that calendar to probably the end of this week or following Monday, so we can start talking about who will fill those spots. We want to do coffee chats too, we sent some dates out for that. We also, we're working with Brenda emailed Brittany Blaney.
Oh, good, oh, yes.
She's talking us into, actually Nancy and I will be doing a little video on.
Oh, really?
So, we heard.
I mean, you also did incredible, there was 2
One
meetings where
take
you
minutes.
guys presented that was an incredible amount of information.
I told her about that. I said, I think we can you splice that. You the one who said, suggested that, Jessica. So we're gonna look into that too and see if we can get that, but we'll get every possible avenue we can.
Is there something next week?
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen next week.
Yeah.
Thursday, they have Berlin on Thursday. Nancy, you're gonna go over the schedule. though.
Yeah, I'll go. I have it all.
That's why I didn't wanna,
Cool. All right, so that's good for Megan. Lori's not here, so we're not going to do number 3 and 4 there. Number 2, we haven't had meetings yet, but I can talk to Paul and Carol about their availability. I'll talk to you guys about that, hopefully this week. All right.
That's okay.
Too soon?
Tuesday.
See what we can. All right, Carol.
I wanted to let everybody know about the interview process. If you saw the newsletter this week, we're launching that. Those interviews, we're starting with surveys. We'll have a survey coming out for the Tohoto principal this coming Friday. And we'll soon be collecting, we put out information about who we wanted to serve on the interview committees, trying to seek representatives from all different facets of the community. And we'll be asking soon for volunteers for that. We want to make sure folks have the dates ahead of time because you really need that commitment of all of those things if you're going to volunteer to do this work. We want to make this very comprehensive. John Campbell is really working with me. He'll be coordinating the interviews themselves, which primarily will be taking place here. And so to keep an eye out to this week for the survey, the Tohoto and School Committee. Next week, next Friday will be the survey for Boylston. And then we'll go from there. So you have the schedule, I think, of everything happening as far as the interviews. We'll be bringing those final candidates into the schools so that staff who are not serving on the committees will have a chance, and parents also will have a chance to meet the candidates, the top candidates, and students as well, because we love to hear from their input. So I will be involved on that level with the meeting with those candidates and listen to the feedback from the folks who are involved in meeting with them in the schools. So
How many candidates do you expect to make it to that point?
typically 2 or 3, I will say. Yeah. I'm hoping we get a good pool. We're starting early enough, I think, that we'll be able to get, this is usually the time of the year when folks start thinking about applying for different positions. So I think we're going to be right in the prime of that time frame. So that's what we'll do. I also, go ahead.
So one question, how is student selected for that?
I think we'll do student council over here at Tohoto, and we'll talk about it. I'm not sure Boylston and how we'll do that for the student council, but we do want to have their voice heard in that. So.
How do parents get involved with that? Or do they?
Parents will get involved primarily through the boards. For example, representatives from PTO, we're PTO, and Berlin School Council, CDCAP will be representative. So we also have to have time for space for the teachers and various grade spans to participate.
Will those interviews be open, like can you sit and watch them, or is it only the people on the committee?
We hadn't talked about that yet, so we'll have to talk about that. Those are open interviews, so I'm not sure about that. We can talk about that. Yeah, we didn't think about that. Not sure. I do want to also mention to you that the job descriptions you'll be voting on tonight have a few changes in that. Probably the most significant one is the principal's job description. The change in it is that we're moving those positions to full-time, full year. They typically been 220 or 225 days, but we felt that since the principals are here quite a bit during the summer, we want to have that, and they'll take the same vacation times that we have available, the same number of days. Their pay will be increased slightly. It's only about 20 to 21 additional days, but we feel that we need to have principals here over the summer as much as possible with the rest of the administrative staff. So that's probably the biggest change, followed by John Campbell's position. We're adding that stipend piece for the elementary curriculum piece to that. So his the same principal position with that addition. So that's what you'll be looking at tonight.
Anybody have a question for Carol?
Sorry, I just have a question. So for like the interviewing committee, you were planning on having a student representative from student council, a parent, and then volunteers from this council, or what exactly would be on this committee?
Sure. Are you looking for the Tohoto principal or specifically?
It doesn't matter. I'm just wondering, like, for the interview process, who's going to be on each committee? Like,
Sure. Oh, well, we have a whole list of those representatives. I can tell you for the Tohoto principal, we have the Tohoto PTO rep, school council rep, CPAC rep, school committee members, special education specialist rep, middle school team leader, high school department chair, athletic department rep, and performing arts rep.
okay, thank you.
And then when the final candidates come in, I will give a chance for representative groups from, like, for example, student council.
Thank you.
We'd love to have everyone who wants to get involved in this and over. Try to, that's pretty big already.
It's a lot of cooks.
What's that?
It's a lot of cooks.
it's a lot of us. We were trying to manage, like, bring it down, but also offer the opportunity to what additional representatives to participate.
You need to be available for the dates, though. I think that's an important thing. So that will definitely weed out the people that are like, well, I have one complaint I want to voice versus I really am invested in this and I want to. Because it's like it's like 4 to 6 2-hour sessions within a couple week span. So it's a commitment.
And that's why we want to get people that have
Yes.
times and dates out early, so that if you were committing, that you would know what they were.
Yeah.
The first one is really the planning session, going over the interview questions, reviewing some resumes of the individuals, and just planning for the process itself.
I'm good? Next up is Director of Finance and Operations, Nancy, on some budget issues. Items.
Okay. So the first thing I'd like to start with is our surplus disposal request. So in the school committee folder, you'll find a surplus disposal request form for math books and math textbooks for grades 6, 7, and 8, and they come to a value of $9,933. These materials are no longer needed by the school since these textbooks and workbooks range from 6 to 19 years old. So we would like to have permission from the committee to dispose of them through waste removal.
Is that recycling? Can I add on
Yeah,
to that too?
recycling.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
you may be seeing more of this in the next year or so. There's many pieces of old material. I see the principal
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
The teachers are storing in their closets and
Yeah.
they've made to please remove. They're really old and we'll never use them again. Way moved, right? Lisa and Francine are nodding because it would look like this to remove them several years ago. So this will be.
We would like the opportunity to share them with other school districts, but due to the fact nobody wants them, they're just too old.
Caroline.
So just for the old school books, are you planning on selling them or recycling them?
These would be recycled, they're just so.
So we wouldn't get the $9,000 back.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Probably not worth 9,000 anymore, right? They're worthless.
They probably will be. We did some research around.
Yeah, we did
That's
some
how we came to the
research.
amount that they.
Oh, that's fair market value.
Yes.
I thought that's what you paid.
No, oh gosh, no.
Yeah.
So I sent, I'm on a listserv with the other district director of finance, and they're all trying to get rid of it.
So no one wants to buy it.
Nobody wants to buy it.
All right.
So there's-
Like other countries,
So it's funny you say that. I have a friend who actually works with a school in a different country, but they have to pay the shipping. So the shipping would be on us. Yeah, but great thought.
wonder like what the shipping costs are, costs
I didn't think of that.
So you said there's a lot more items around that would free up space for teachers. Why not just get them?
Is there a way to offer these items for free to the community in a very low effort way?
Yeah.
In the event that there are people that, want to teach their kids at home or tutor or have a distinct interest in math. Could there be a website of, maybe a simple page of, we're gonna throw this away, and just keep throwing stuff on there as you clean out the closet. The cleaning out the closet page on our PBRSD website, is that more worth it? Is it more effort than it's worth?
We discussed this, I've discussed this with the principals, and Mrs. Ailes came up with an idea that they've done in another district that she's been in, and I liked this too, and knowing how much we have to get rid of, I just wondered if you want to share that.
Yeah, no, I don't mind. It's just the idea that, in the winter, we pay our custodians to be in the building on Saturdays. And so if we could maximize that by having, going through and having the surplus items out on for BES, I would say, out on cafeteria tables. And we just had the items and we said from 9 to 11 or whatever these hours, you can come and go through, but by the end, we're going to recycle the items. I think part of our hesitation is that some of the items are no longer valid in their research of how we teach kids. And so that is something that we need to consider, but certainly that is a way for us to maximize a dollar amount because we're paying somebody already to be there. The basketball, so basketball is there.
Okay.
I know Nancy was like, wait a minute. What? Basketball pays for the custodian to be there, so they're in the building on Saturday, so it would just require an administrator or something else to be there.
It's a tough one, because I know we're trying to remove a burden from the school by getting rid of this. Best intentions aside, we don't want to add more burden into the process.
Right, and we're happy to look into some other options for this, and some of it may be more relevant to, some materials may be more relevant to parents now, if they're newer.
I have seen it in a prior place done where you just post it on the website, workbooks, if you want to come look through them. It could be good workbooks for the kids to work over the summer. Give the parents a week to come in, have an open table, and they could come do that. I've seen it done a lot more during the summertime.
Sure.
But and then if that doesn't work, then you go to
Spring clean.
Yeah.
In February.
That's something we can consider too.
Yeah.
Summers are great,
Yeah.
especially if we're going to have Christmas. And
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right, well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, after going through the tour, I don't think Berlin was as bad, but I do some of those classes were crazy in Berlin. BES was like, there is so much stuff.
Just like get my hand.
Yeah, it's almost like overwhelming. I mean, there's a science lab that's just full of stuff. So, yeah, I think it's a need, and I don't think we should put too much effort into like, if you want to do a web page, or I like that idea, I think get rid of it. You got it, because as we grow, we're going to need that space. And if it's not cleaned out, like, oh, we can't accommodate this other classroom, or, then that's going to create more. So I like that you guys are taking the initiative on that. I say, yeah, I'm a big purger.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, I wish there was a cheaper way to recycle, but.
Okay. Good? Okay. So in your packet, you'll find an updated fiscal year timeline. These changes that have been made are highlighted. There are 3 of them. The first is a meeting that we are having with the Berlin Capital Committee. That is on Thursday, January 12th. We will be reviewing the fiscal year 24 capital budget request. This is an in-person meeting at the town hall at 5 p.m. in room 226. The next edition is a meeting with the Boylston Select Board.
Excuse me, Nancy,
Yes.
are you referencing something on the drive?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
yes, I am.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
my 24 budget timeline, Bob.
Yeah. Looks like that.
In the reports, no, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next is the Boylston Select Board meeting. That's on Tuesday, January 17th at 6:30. And this is to give an overview of our fiscal year 24 budget, and this will be over Zoom. The last is a meeting with the Berlin Finance Committee. That's on Wednesday, February 8th at 7:30. And this is to review the fiscal year 24 budget. I'm waiting for confirmation, but I believe this is an in-person meeting. Those are the changes to the budget timeline. So I quickly wanted to go over the fiscal year 23 budget. So in your packet, you'll find the fiscal year 23 year-to-date update. It is, at the top of it, you'll see that it's shown for the entire school district, and then it's broken out by school. So in a brief overview, I just want to let you know we're in a good financial position for this school year at this point in time. As you are reviewing these figures, please keep in mind that we have several line items that are not encumbered. So therefore, the budget balance is always a changing number. Some items that we don't encumber are repairs, supplies, conferences, memberships, professional development, IT substitutes, and there's more. Much of the savings that we currently have are from our fixed charges, which is our healthcare and our benefits. Typically, these savings are from new hires who did not elect our benefits. These amounts can fluctuate throughout the year with new hires and unexpected costs with unemployment. We are also forecasted to have savings with special education transportation. This line item is budgeted a year in advance, and at times it can be difficult as movement in education is very common. Also, the prior director of finance prepaid transportation line items last year, which freed up some of these funds. Lastly, we have savings in positions where we haven't been able to find anyone to fill these positions, or we have had new hires come in at a lower salary level than budgeted. Overall, these savings most likely will not close the budget with substantial savings, as these funds will help line items that are forecasted to be going over, such as our increasing electricity rates, repairs to our buildings. Does anyone have any questions on that part of the update? Okay. I also wanted the committee to be aware that I am still holding the November and December invoices for NRT. So they did send me a revision, but I actually sent it back to them. That I didn't feel that they gave us an adequate discount for the amount of buses that we have been short. I have been keeping track of the days, so I sent it back to them. So we've been going back and forth, but I just wanted to let you know that it's kind of in the works and it still hasn't been paid. It is encumbered in the figures, the full amount, in what you have seen. And just a quick update on transportation in general. Before break, in our last meeting, I was hopeful that we were going to have a driver for Berlin Bus 3, and unfortunately that didn't happen. NRT is still feeling hopeful that the driver will have his license by the end of the month. I released the Where Is My Kids app this past Friday. I don't think the app is perfect, but I think it will help. Families will need our district code and their student ID to sign up. The district code was sent out in our newsletter and by a district email that was sent out yesterday. A parent can receive their child's student ID from their school directly, and in the middle school and high school, the student ID is the same as their lunch ID. So that's something to keep in mind, but that's not the case in elementary schools. Yeah, it's a little different. And does anybody have any questions on that?
I'm curious, so to do the prior app, you had to have student ID as well. Would that number be the same if you were your student then?
I'm quite certain that the student ID stays with you throughout your enrollment through the school, right? Yeah. Yep. Okay. One of the other things that I wanted to briefly mention is in athletics. I believe most of us are aware as to what has recently occurred in the professional football world this past couple of weeks. It has proven what we already know, which is that AEDs are extremely important and they save lives. I just want the school committee to know that I spoke to our athletic director and I confirmed that our school district has 5 portable AEDs. The AEDs are brought to all of our home games, and if there's an off-site game, it's provided by the off-site school. And if they aren't able to provide one, we have one to bring with us. All of our coaches are CPR certified and they're trained using AEDs. At this point in time, we only have an athletic trainer at playoffs games, as this is when it's required. This is, however, a discussion of the possibility of having us have to hire a full-time athletic trainer. I'll keep you updated as that discussion continues throughout the MIAA. Yes.
There was some discussion of the athletic director also being trained as, what did you say?
Athletic trainer?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, I mentioned that previously, I wasn't sure if
there was talk within the school or talk with the?
No, at a previous meeting when we were,
Okay.
you know, or maybe not.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying,
Yeah.
is there any discussion of like maybe including it within our training or providing money to keep that training?
I think that we could look into that. Yeah. Good suggestion.
I just wanted to say on behalf of the athletic community, which I'm very much a part of, thank you for checking into that. Because I know that the parents on the sidelines, especially with, with cell service, it is unnerving that, if there was a medical emergency, you getting medical personnel out there in a speedy time, it's a bit of a gamble. So to know that the coaches are trained is hugely helpful for people listening, and that we do have the kits too, so that's awesome. So thank you very much for your work.
I'm curious, for after-school sports, I assume the office gets locked at some point, like if, back in the day, there used to be a public phone that you could run up and dial 911. I wonder if a similar, something could be put by, by the front entrance in all schools that you could physically dial 911 without access.
Completely read my mind.
Yeah.
A red phone,
A red-
for emergency
red
purposes
phone.
only.
Yeah.
I think something says that it probably should be put outside of the school building because you need a key to enter the school building. So if there is an emergency, like a parent were to run up, I think it'd be more helpful if it was outside the building.
Maybe both.
I will ask Dan, facility director, to look into that.
Now, but the field is so far, that baseball field, isn't it? And there was an accident there like it was last spring. I think we talked about this, and
Yeah.
thank God there was like a doctor and a nurse there. Like 2 kids collided and the kid had a concussion and somebody ran to the road to dial 911, right? But there were like first responders or whatever on site, thank God, but I mean, like, if you're gonna do it outside the school, I mean, that field is pretty far, right? Yeah, right, like you have to.
Because there are telephone lines that run along the road, so I wonder if, public phones are a thing of the past.
Yeah. I know, I just think we gotta get cell service for this school. I just think it's huge. I mean, another thing we talked about too, I know, it was like last year when we talked about, active shooters and we had the presentation by the police departments. It's just so scary to think, if something happened and, you can't dial from your phone. So,
Have repeaters, I think I mentioned it one, but have repeaters been bought to be looked into?
yes,
Okay.
there's a whole thing. If they do that, then they're out of a violation code for allowing kids to access their, it's a whole, right? That whole Paul explained it. Yeah, Paul's not here, he explained that to us. But yes, repeaters, that was the very first thing we brought up like last year, and it would like bring us
Because
out.
that's the school then creating that cellular network, is that?
We'd have to pay a fine because we're out of some code. Yes, the school would be creating a network, it would be an open network, it wouldn't be blocked, so the kids could access anything, they could be on their phones all day. Versus if we just have a cell tower, the liability falls outside of the school. So I mean, we could do it, but I think that the fee was like 20 or 30 or 40, it was like 40 grand, it was expensive. It was like thousands of dollars.
Also just opens up.
It opens up liabilities too, like if something happened versus if there's a cell tower
I
and
don't
it's
know,
just
no way to put a passcode or a block, I don't know.
not on cellular service. I think they have it on the internet.
Go back to the AEDs, you talked about sports, we'll go to gym classes, are they available then?
Yeah.
There's one
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, just be on
Repeaters.
the
Yes, has one too, right?
Yeah, stationary and all.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like,
Yeah, all right.
well,
I mainly was asking him about the portable ones, just because of the games
Outside.
readily available, but yeah.
But I mean, it's just great, Nancy, that, I've been in the district for a long time, this has never been discussed. And I don't think it's, I mean, I know that there was an awful incident with a football player,
Right.
but still, that, that you're
So-
thinking about it, it's on your radar, and this is great.
Great, thank you. I have one more, and then I'm.
You're doing good.
So I just wanted to update everyone on the Boylston facility assessment. So recently, the Office of Inspector General changed the requirements under 30B for school districts. So it now says that we can solicit written quotes for supplies and services estimated between 10,000 and 100,000. So it was previously 50,000. So due to this change, we don't have to go back out for bid. I spoke to Dan, our facility director, and he is working on getting us 3 quotes for this project. So hopefully this will speed it along a little bit faster.
Which project?
That's to do the facility assessment
Oh, the
and
assessment
invoice it. Yep. And now I am done. Well, no, I'm not. I have the preschool teacher to discuss. So Janelle and I want to talk about bringing on 0.5, an additional 0.50 preschool teacher for Berlin. Do you want to
Sure.
take it from here?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so we submitted a report, and we are requesting to increase the current Berlin Memorial preschool teacher is currently a 0.5 half-time position. Our request is to increase that to a full-time position. We started off this school year with our with our half-time preschool teacher on a leave, and then we learned later that she wasn't going to return. So we've had a long-term substitute in that position all school year. We've had the position posted as 0.5. We have not had any success in attracting a 0.5 or half-time person. Feedback that we've received is that, while it's a lovely school district, love to work here, there are opportunities that are full-time, and that's what folks are looking for. So we feel like if we had the position at full-time and able to post it for that, we would be able to draw more and more experienced and qualified candidates. In addition, because this is a very busy time for preschool, our referrals and evaluations for special education services at the preschool level, we are now projecting that we're actually going to need that additional preschool program in the afternoon that a full-time teacher would provide us. So both of these things have sort of come up within the same 2-week period. So those are sort of 2 reasons why we would like that. And we would like to be able to open up, and we may very well need to open up that afternoon preschool program in Berlin this school year, whether it's late winter or early spring. I don't quite have that timeline. There's a lot of moving parts, of course, with special education. But we know it takes time to post the position, find a qualified candidate, get them into place, et cetera. And then open up that afternoon preschool program for students and families if they're interested in signing up for it.
What are the current hours of the preschool now?
So I believe the morning preschool runs about, and I'm looking at John too.
8:45 to 11:45.
Thank you. So an afternoon preschool would be, what time did you say it ends? 11:45?
11:45.
Yeah, so we would probably go about, I don't know, 12:30 to 3 or something about that. So it's about a 2.5-hour session. Yeah.
Those be split sessions or the same kids throughout the day?
So these are half-time programs. These are 2.5-hour programs. This does not give us a pathway for a full-day program. And it does seem as though there's some interest in that, and we very much are interested in exploring being able to do that. That's part of our district improvement plan, is to be able to study and look at that closely. That comes down to, of course, facilities, numbers of teachers, et cetera. Because the ratios that are required, preschool programs cannot have more than 15 students in them. So we couldn't take the morning and the afternoon program and make them all full day. That would be too many students at once. So we are looking at that, but it's a little bit more slow going.
So it would be more of like how IEPs, like if they needed that so many hours, they couldn't put one.
Yeah, so when I'm talking about the projected need for special education, that is addressing the needs for students with IEPs. But these are integrated preschool programs, so we have a certain number of slots for students with and without IEPs, and that's what makes it integrated.
And it's phenomenal. Both of my children went through it, Tohoto, but it's a wonderful program.
I agree.
So financially, if we were to hire another half-time preschool teacher at this point in time, it would be an additional 18,000 through the end of the year. And approximately. We're just about halfway through.
And you have, we can pull that from school choice or something to,
At this point in time, we have a little bit of savings in the budget, and I think we could make it work.
okay.
How many students, this is for Berlin? you said?
Yes.
How many preschool students do you have now in Berlin?
So Berlin has, right now, they have 2 programs, both run in the morning. There's a 3-day program, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and there's a 2-day program that runs Tuesday, Thursday. And they're both running at or near capacity, and capacity is 15 students. So one program may have 13 and the other one may have 14, but they're very near capacity.
Are they unique groups of children?
Yes.
There's no overlap?
So in special education, there is some overlap because some students do need a 5-day program, which so sometimes when looking at the data, it can get a little squirrely because it's, are you counting the same student twice? But for the most part, in general, the rule is that they are 2 distinct groups.
So it might be 20 to 25 kids-ish, maybe 25?
Yeah, 25, 26, yeah, somewhere in that range, yes. Yep. And I will say that there actually, it was new, I've been involved with the preschool in this district for, I don't know, 5, 6 years or so.
At least,
So-
I dealt
sometime.
with it for MJ, yeah.
And I have to say that this was the first year that I actually saw one or more families opt in to both the 3 and the 2-day program to create a 5-day program for themselves. But those are more the exceptions than they are the rule. It's a trend to watch, and I think it's part of what we want to be able to study in both looking at a full-day program and a 5-day program. I think when we take a look at that, are we talking about a full-day program that runs 3 days a week, or we're talking about a full-day program that runs 5 days a week? So many different configurations.
Yeah, and can you quantify the interest you've had or share about for afternoon programs? I'm wondering what this person would do with their other 0.5 while there's just morning programs.
Yeah, so a couple of interesting points there. So what we would be doing with that extension of that staff member's day is we would be opening up an afternoon program that would run Monday, Wednesday, Friday afternoons. And we would then be able to open those slots up. We would be able to make the slots open available to students with special ed services and needs. And then we would be able to open up those slots to families that wanted to tuition their child into the program. And then that running 3 distinct preschool programs for a teacher requires a certain amount of preparation, consultation, et cetera. So their Tuesday, Thursdays would consist of some of their preparation time, having a special education license, if they needed to lend a hand in kindergarten for an hour or so, we might have that flexibility as well.
Just out of curiosity, and I don't mean to drag this one out, but
I could talk about preschool.
what does it mean? What does it mean to tuition their kids into the program?
So the preschool programs are actually, parents pay a tuition for the preschool programs. And they are,
It's all right.
no, that's what we do. Right, that are,
Like about 1,600 for the 2-day program and close to like 2,000 for the year. This is for the year.
Yeah.
So it's like 150 you pay on 10 monthly installments.
But is there a?
Something close, it was close to that.
It's the same deal.
2,300.
You envision the same deal regardless of which program
yes.
the children are in.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the important note that, that Nancy was reminding me of is that, the program, some special education students need the program in order to make progress, and there is no tuition for those students. Yeah. So there are definitely a lot of layers and.
Yeah.
And if the chair would like, we'd be happy to come back and talk in more detail about how preschool works entirely.
I know there's an item on the district improvement plan
Yes.
to kind of evaluate
It is,
that. That's
yes.
probably a better time to
Mhm.
dig in. What I wonder about is like, where's the line between education and daycare?
Mhm.
And, parent interest in having a place to put their children
Mhm.
full-time, 5 days a week.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's the right educational choice for those children. I don't know what it is.
Right, right.
You probably do. and I'd love to learn.
Yeah, and the resources too, because, we have a certain amount of space in the building, et cetera, so.
Right.
Indeed, a complex topic.
For a long time.
And there's usually a wait list for those sessions, right?
So the wait list is interesting, and we have had a wait list, we ran a wait list fairly intensely, I was looking at that data this afternoon. We had a wait list of 19 just a couple of years ago that lasted all the way through the end of the school year. But as of right now, for this current school year, there is no wait list. And based on the applications that are coming in for next year, I do not anticipate a wait list. We will need to do a lottery for the applications to make sure we get people into the right first and second choice spots, but not this. I don't think it will result in a wait list. So it varies a lot.
I remember that year, oh my God, I was so nervous. But yeah, that was one
Huge wait
of,
list.
I think it was either MJ's last year or Madeline's first year. And my neighbor didn't take it on, she was number 4 in Don't Be Dropped program. It's a great program. If you have any questions, Bob, it was awesome.
I have no doubt in that, I'm sure.
All right, anything else?
Unless there are any questions.
Thank you.
Right on time, John. You guys are all set, okay.
Talking to the first, comedy and crime here.
All right.
Do you want to chair?
Do you want to sit up next to me?
So my name is Lisa Sequeira. I am the Science, Technology, and Engineering Department Chair at Tohoto. Francine Gleason is the Math Department Chair at Tohoto. And I do have to relay apologies for Peter Doherty. He cannot attend today as he is not feeling well. He is listening though, so I told him he's very nervous. I am going to be the voice of Tohoto this evening, so I'm hoping to do everyone justice for the reports to make sure of my accuracy. Ms. Gleason is here, and I hope. Okay. So right. So everybody has it. And so I'm going to move around, and I apologize for the viewers at home, but I don't see it, so it doesn't work. So in introductions again, Lisa Sequeira, and so I'm here to present all 3 ELA, math, and science MCAS results for Tohoto. Grades 6 through 12, and we'll break it down. So we're going to be doing math first. And I'm wearing new glasses, and so I actually have to step back over here so I can actually see what I'm presenting. I apologize.
You're fine, you're fine, you're fine.
Okay, so the good news is that our students and staff should be congratulated for their achievement at the 10th grade level and really at all levels, considering the challenges that we faced over the past few years. This is a snapshot of achievement for 10th grade math for 2022 at the top here, and this is over time. So you can see just briefly by the colors, we're looking at blue and green, exceeding and meeting expectations for the school and the district does far outweigh the average for the state. And just to remind everybody, and this will move forward throughout the presentation, 2019 was, I had to ask the kids today, I'm like, when was COVID? Like, when did we, what was happening? So 2019 was a normal year. And 2020, that is when COVID hit and when all of the MCAS were paused. 2021 was our hybrid year. 2022 was our, is this year. And you can see we're really back to essentially achievement levels that are equivalent to pre-COVID. What is changing? I think we have to recognize as a district that what is changing is our school population. It is a wonderful, amazing opportunity to meet so many different students, but we have to recognize we have a changing population. we have a change in population, we have increased number of ELLs, we have increased numbers of low socioeconomic students, our increase in high need students, it's just increasing. And those are challenges that we all need to face. And we need to retool, and we need to make sure that those students are being supported in understanding how to do that the best way possible. This is a scatter plot of achievement for meeting or exceeding expectations and growth, the median or the average student growth percentile for Tohoto. This is used to compare an individual district's growth and achievement with other districts. So you can see that this is us, this is Tohoto, green Tohoto, and this is state. So we are above and beyond, we are at 71% for the mean student growth percentile and 83% meeting or exceeding expectations. So we really, this is a really very valuable graphic for both ELA and math, because student growth can be calculated. This is not something that happens in science, because science MCAS is a snapshot of what happens.
Excuse me,
Oh, yes.
just a question on the previous slide.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. So the chart is normalized around the state's performance, is that correct?
Yes.
So it's moved around so specifically so the state is at 50/50.
Oh, no, that is not. No, it is not. This is actually scores, average scores. So the average taken for the 302 districts that, comprise the Massachusetts state school system, average, this is where it lies.
It lands exactly on 50/50?
It does for the 10th grade.
Wow.
It does.
But you'll see it change for the slides for the
Okay.
6th grade, 7th grade. And I apologize, that's why she's.
No problem. That makes sense.
So I'm gonna just get my water here, because otherwise. So this curriculum analysis is important as educators to look at questions, test item analysis in comparison to the state and the state average and how test items were answered. So this line is how Tohoto achieved in each of the test items in compared to the state. And we are above all of, the scores for the state, except for one item. So that is incredibly important information for us, because we then we take a deep dive into each item, and we look, is it content or is it question type? And that's really valuable. And in this case, it was question type, and so that's important, because then we can help students master that type of question. Grade 10 highlights. Tohoto is ranked 4th in the state in student growth percentile in mathematics on the 2022 exam. 84% of Tohoto students are exceeding or meeting expectations in mathematics. So 65 out of the 78 students. So that's really something to be proud of our students for that type of achievement. And the presentation that Peter, Mr. Doherty, here for that presentation, understanding the goalposts are changing. So it is harder to meet these standards. The state is, changing the guidelines and changing the scoring for these tests. So this is 8th grade. Again, we see that our school and district is meeting and exceeding expectations at a higher rate than at the state level. We see about the same. It really is really about the same type of, reflecting the same type of data. We're essentially back to our pre-COVID achievement rates. And this is a scatter plot for 8th grade. And you can see that this is no longer 50-50. So it's 50.
It's 50-36, it's right.
Oh, okay, 50-36. So, and I think it's really important, we'll see this in grade 7. We'll see, this is all the same graphics. You all have access to this. But, looking at, we really want to, look at, how are we doing in comparison to the state? So meeting and exceeding, we are above the state. And then partially meeting and not meeting, that information gets more and more significant. And you're going to see those numbers increase as, we go 7th grade and 6th grade because they're still learning math. And I always find it amazing that people are like, well, what's happening? And well, they're young and they're learning. You know what I mean? Seriously. And it's really impressive to watch the growth over time in math, growth over time in science. It's not calculated, but growth over time in ELA and math is really awesome, incredible, and you'll see that. So we have again, we have 50-37, and Tohoto is again above that state achievement and student growth percentile. And we have 6th grade, again, you see that, it's the same, but you can also see it fluctuates with the state as well. So we are still, achieving above the average state level. That's what we like to see. But we know that, 6th graders and 7th graders and 8th graders, they're accumulating their knowledge, they're accumulating their confidence, which has a great deal to do with, achievement in math. Grade 6, again, we have around 50%, 42%, but again, mean student growth percentile as well as percent meeting or exceeding is, above state level. Growth distribution. This is a great graphic, one that is not available to me, but you can see what we're looking at is, so you have all grades, the first line, and then 4 through 10. And what you're seeing is the darker greens are those growth percentile, growth in high and very high. So those two darker colors, you're seeing high and very high growth. And you can see those bars increasing over time. So by the time they get into 10th grade, you've seen tremendous growth. And you are seeing progressively greater growth. And I think that's what we're looking for.
And this shows it a lot.
And this shows it a great deal. Do you want?
Grade 10 is the one on the right.
Right. So this is great. This is the one we went over today. So you can see, like, these are all, like, all grades. And then you can see from the lower grades up, growth and achievement are increased. And that makes sense because students gain foundation, they gain confidence, and that is reflected in how they are able to manage this type of test. Yes?
Just a question, to that point, are the expectations set in a way that take that into account? These are measurements against expectations, whatever those are, right? So do the expectations take into account that the students are still forming those foundations and whatever?
So whose expectation?
Those that students are measured against.
So the state, I honestly have never had that conversation with any representative. I've had some intense interactions with state representatives on this. Very frank, now I think she ducks from me. So, I don't know if they take that into account. So for example, the person for, the Science MCAS state representative, who's a lovely person and very knowledgeable and all that, they said, we are going to be, moving towards a fully online. And I just, fully online is just hard. And it is really hard. It's hard for everybody. And there are a few students who are really good at taking assessments online, digitally. And she said, and I said, well, do you take this into account? And she said, they're always on their phone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you've not been in a classroom for years. They can be on their phone all day long. They can do the TikTok and the Instagram and all of the things. But you get them on a digital platform for learning, and they're like, how do you do this? What do we do? Like, how do you submit? How do you prove? It's a completely different way of interacting with material. Yes?
And I wanted to add on back to your question. So there are standards that they're expected to meet in each of the grade levels. I think in the middle school level, one of the things that you remember last spring, we had teachers here who spoke to changing the pathway for mathematics so that they are not slowing down the process, but going deeper in 6th and 7th grade, allowing students to get more of those foundational skills. I just talked to the math coach for 6th grade last week, and we're going to be watching those scores to see how much of a difference that has made for those students. So some of them are not skipping over key concepts and skills in those grade levels. So,
and I think
part of this as
You're
well.
still gonna have those students that are those students that will excel and can move through material.
Right.
Okay? You're still gonna have to accommodate that.
Yes. Well, a lesser population,
But a
I
lesser
think, than in
population,
the
so-
past.
Absolutely. Because they're also, I think, oftentimes, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think oftentimes people forget that brain development and, cognitively, your young brains are ready for certain things at certain times. And you can expose them to algebra, and push it and push it and push it. But until their brains are ready, they're not going to absorb it. They're not going to fully grasp it and be able to, apply it in a meaningful way until their brains are ready. And I think that gets lost in the translation, and it makes me feel really sad for some kids because it ends up being that some students can regurgitate that type of thing, even when they don't fully reflect, can reflect in a meaningful way, but they can do the work. And it makes other students who just, they're developmentally not ready, feel less than. And I think it's important for us to recognize that there's brain development that occurs, and we have to be cognizant and appreciate that to meet our learners where they're at.
Yeah, the students that were excelling and being pushed forward quicker, those were the students. They would do well on the MCAS anyways, but they were missing certain content because they had such a large gap by jumping from 6th grade to 7th grade algebra. So when they went to take a 7th grade MCAS, they were actually more prepared to take an 8th grade MCAS as opposed to the 7th grade because of the standards that were covered on the 7th grade test. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I mean, the type, the little kids, or, the elementary kids typing essays that was mentioned, you mentioned developmental stage, I feel like they're still mastering pencil and paper, and then to then be judged on a fully digital thing, like that's a whole other skill set.
I think that you're gonna find as kids move through now, we're testing first graders online. So as they move through, I think they'll come to a place where it's comfortable and they're more confident. There's a developmental piece, I think, that I think really is still being reflected, especially with COVID. You know, you get kids who really have to pull back. But yeah, I think you'll see that distinction disappear over time.
Caroline, did you have a question?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say that I can speak on the student perspective of, learning difficulties during COVID. I think, I was taught that there's some psychology about where you study and how it affects your brain. So students, they were gone from, here's a place where I know I'm going to have to put in the work and study, to be back home in a room where they're like, this is where I watch TV and relax. And there's a study that makes the brain harder to focus when they're having that distinction problem, especially in, adolescence, so.
Adults have the same problem.
Yeah, I just know that I've heard that it's higher in adolescents to be able to make the distinction. So like if they're doing work in bed, it's harder for them to be able to go to sleep, for instance, because their brain can't distinct what is for what purpose, the area.
So what is the math department doing? So new curriculum is being piloted this year in grades 6 through 8. We believe this new curriculum is formatted to better meet the standards in these grades. It is really important to understand that in every grade, we are teaching standards that are put out by the state. We don't create, we get creative, but we are getting creative around what the guidance is from the state. The pathway for middle school has changed to align, this address what Francine was speaking about with the state frameworks, which allows our middle school students to meet full expectations of the middle school standards and be prepared for advanced mathematics in high school. As MCAS, the time draws near, the teachers discuss the testing formats and provide reminders about test-taking strategies to alleviate any fears or questions in regards to the exam. The MCAS tests require an impressive amount of writing in all areas of the curriculum. Consequently, the math department requires students to be able to answer open response questions in a correct format, and that ends up being, reviewed in coursework. The math department incorporates open response questions into their assessments so the students are prepared to answer open response questions with ease. And the mathematics portion of the MCAS emphasizes problem solving. Very few items ask students to merely add or divide. Rather, the students are given a situation and asked to solve it. In order to prepare for this test, daily math classes are asking students to work through many word problems. Does anybody have word problem anxiety? I remember I did so much in school, like crazy. To apply problem-solving strategies, homework assignments reflect these types of problems, as well as the typical calculation style homework. Students are given more access to online practice in Delta Math, IXL, and Desmo, so that students are familiar with online testing tools in math. A point to this is that funding for these is incredibly important. These programs cost money. They are essential. They are adaptive to students' learning and achievement level, and we'll go over material and reinforce material where students need reinforcements, and we'll move more quickly through material where students are excelling. The math department analyzes the results of the MCAS as a team, paying special attention to where there may be deficiencies. We look at all questions that score at or below state level and note where in the curriculum these topics are located to be sure that the material is being covered. The math department provides MCAS practice to all students in the 10th grade before the exam and incorporates these questions into classroom assessments where appropriate. An MCAS remediation course is offered every spring to any student who wishes to attend. The success of students who faithfully show up to this class is substantial, and the math department would like to continue in offering this course. Usually, this course along with a biology MCAS remediation course are both offered and have been offered through grant monies.
And Peter has you know, add. I was hoping that he could add English to that this year. That there's.
Did you hear that?
Forgive me, yes, I heard that.
Right, okay.
When are those done? That's right.
So, after school, so for math, we take 6 weeks out, from the exam, and it's two days after school, for 6 weeks, so there's 12 sessions. For biology, we take 6 weeks out from biology, there's a 1 week overlap, which usually is fine. And I have found great success with one after-school program, and then I do one Google Meet, usually from 7 to 8 p.m. In the evening. That's been great and really allows for students to access remediation when they're, they've had trouble like with travel and, scheduling. So now we'll discuss the science, technology, and engineering. So this is our 8th grade science, technology, and engineering MCAS scores. So the top figure is the overall state average assessment and achievement levels, and the bottom graphic is a Tohoto, and there's 72, or actually 71% are either exceeding or meeting expectations, whereas the average for the state is 42%. So for the 8th grade MCAS, we're far exceeding what the average state score is. So there are 87, oh, yes.
In all these grades, all these charts here that you show us, yes, we're far exceeding the state. Like here, it looks to me like there's still a quarter of the entire class who's not even meeting expectations. Is that?
That's the state.
That's the state.
The bottom is the district, right?
Right, so
The
this is
yellow
the
line is
state.
partially meeting. Right? The yellow
So
line.
that's partially meeting.
Is that over, how far over the 20th? 23.
Well, it would be right here, partially meeting.
So yeah, so there's exactly
26%.
28% is not even meeting expectations.
Well, no, that's not true. Partially meeting is not meeting. Not meeting is not meeting. And partially meeting is that they're moving, towards
So, but they're not where they're
expectations.
supposed to be, is that what that is?
Excuse me?
They should be, like, we should want to, as a district, set a standard where everybody can at least meet the perspective.
That
We have
would,
a quarter of the class here that's not doing it.
so I would say, yeah, that would be, in a perfect world, yes. But that isn't reality. So partially, so
Can I
students.
jump in for a second?
Right, yes.
I know what you mean, so let me clarify.
Okay. Thank
Sorry,
you.
but not with that new.
That's so, not even in a perfect world where all the children were perfect children.
Right.
What we struggle with, and you've heard me talk about, 90% meets or exceed by the end of 3rd grade. There are children for whom this test is inappropriate. There are children who take the test because everybody has to take the test. We know that they're not going to meet the standard because, for a variety of reasons, I think it'll be because they're special education students. It's not fair to expect them to do it. It'd be like expecting me to run. It's just, I'm going on the track with you, but I'm not going to be very fast. And that's what we're showing. It's not that we're not where we need to be. It's that we have to learn for those children who don't meet or exceed expectations. Are we doing our best for them? What's their growth rate look like? I think last time Peter was here, he was talking about the importance of student growth. And you can look at those kids who don't meet the standard, but they're still growing at or above what we would expect. That's what we shoot for.
So what does this mean in terms of like when they go to present the budget to the town says, well, how are you doing? And we show them this graph.
I think
What are the implications for us, the state?
it's where you start to look at our scores in relationship to districts like ours. And our scores, especially at Tohoto, are really strong in comparison to schools like our school district, and even in comparison to some schools who might be, considered better than our school district. I think there's probably not a teacher in the building who just didn't think they could do better, given more time and more resources and, opportunity, because you're always striving to do better.
Right.
But the reality is, I keep saying 90%, it's not really a very realistic goal. If we got to 75, 80% in tests like this, in each subject, in each grade, we would be at the top of the state.
So comparing us to other districts, like you said, and a parent or a taxpayer telling us that it's compared to another district, that's fine, but we still have a quarter of the class at whatever level. And you want how much more from me this year? What are you gonna do with it?
Well, and that's the challenge. So you've got to quantify that. Sometimes it's hard to quantify. These are, the 8th grade science numbers are really, really good numbers. This is an area where it's not that we're satisfied, but we're doing lots. It's the challenge for our school district. And I'm starting to step on your time. I told him, okay, I got stuff to say, so wrap it up.
So it's like,
The challenge for our school district is to identify our areas of growth and to articulate those effectively in the community. We need to do, and I'm going to argue, we need to do a better job in early literacy. We are not where we need to be. But I think that through the work of really good elementary school teachers and then the hard work that gets done here, we're in a much better place. But if we don't get improved programming and better support for teachers in terms of professional development, we're not going to get our kids to where we want them to be. Peter and I talked over the summer. My goal is for every kid to be able to read The Outermost House. And it's a wonderful book about the kid and have them understand it. There we're not yet. That's right. I would do that.
I think also, if you look, if you add the exceeding and the meeting, that's 71% are meeting or exceeding the expectations too. So I think if someone said, well, a quarter, or well, the other quarter is, or 3/4 are doing it, so.
And I also think that is important to recognize, as Peter had identified in the last presentation, and particularly with science, and you'll see in the next slide, they're changing the goalposts. So students who were meeting expectations last year may be partially meeting this year because they've changed the delineation, they're like, okay, so instead of, 230, it's now going to be, 235 or 200. They're changing what it means. And depending on, what things are released, this is the first year for biology that they've released the new exam questions. The past 2 years, it's been shooting in the dark. I have had no idea what the questions are, even when they released. So I was understanding, what standards that we might need support in.
They were doing the same thing in math as they were researching the exam. They weren't allowing us access to what types of questions the students weren't performing on.
We had no idea.
We had no idea what the questions were. Now, we're back to being able to see what those questions are.
So going back to what John was saying, with this 30%, I'm sure you know exactly who those students are, so you can target them for their help and all that, but can we get some statistics on, you mentioned earlier, why is this changing? It's because of our school population is changing. ELL, low socioeconomic, I know that's something we talked a lot about last year, which now higher needs populations. Do you have a breakdown of percentages that aren't meeting, that fall into those groups?
We can get that information. I will invite you, you can go on, and this is thanks to Sally, DART, DSTART, you just Google DSTART, and you can look up anything about the district, our population, the breakdown of high needs.
As it relates to the schools.
I can get some of that, but as it's changed over time. As our population has changed over time.
Yeah, I think everybody understands the population is changing, just look at the building that's going on, but as it relates to these schools, is
Yep.
is it,
We,
you know,
right,
a
we can,
certain demographic has moved to town and they're falling here, or is it spread all over the place? Is it equal?
right, we can absolutely, get that information and download those reports.
I know in math, I can do it by different subgroups.
Right, we can download, yeah, by different sectors.
I would add to this too in the big picture. I think this is to your point, Mike. We also need to think about how we're instructing our students to what we're going to present to the community. And I think this speaks to the budget, the 3-year plan, to the portrait of a graduate. Looking at how we instruct. Are we instructing the way our students need that instruction for where they need to be? Shifting the way we're focusing project-based learning, experiential learning. They're going to these classrooms, because you're doing a ton of that, Francine. They're thinking about real-world problems, so that's how they're engaging more, I think, in meeting the standards. So we have to look at that piece of it. We need to be able to continuously offer PD opportunities, and teachers avail themselves of coursework to learn more about content pedagogy so that they can instruct better. So these are affording more opportunities. Lisa goes out as a science department chair and a coach, and the other one, department chairs go out, coaches to a variety of different conferences. They go on to affiliations, right? They'll learn about how to improve teaching and learning. I think, and then also looking, we were talking about with math, for example, what resources are we providing? If we have resources that don't align to what we're teaching, if they're scrambling to try to say, we've got to get to the standard, but the resource that we have, we're going to have to build more supplementary materials, that takes time. So that's why I think somebody mentioned before, when we see one particular question that the students didn't do well on, right?
Mhm.
What are we using for our resources? Why did they miss that question? What do we need to shore up as far as our curriculum? That all ties into this piece too, I think that you're asking about.
Yeah, I'm only asking because of what we are trying to do.
Yeah, we'll get questions around that.
So for the 8th grade, there were 87 students in the district identified for taking the exam. So 14%, 12 students exceeded 50 students meeting, 26, 23 students, and 2% of the students not meeting expectations. So we also try to identify who the students are that were not meeting expectations and understand who those students are. Students who did not take the MCAS but were supposed to are identified as not meeting. I think that's important. So if they missed, if they were absent and they were on the roster and they missed it, it could not, that is counted as not meeting. So it is a test that wasn't taken.
And there were a couple of them.
Yeah.
There's no opportunity to retake.
Oh, yeah, oh, absolutely, they can retake it, but for that test year, it is slated as not meeting.
So there's no makeup for
Not
later.
Not for that, it's projected in a different, like, this is for this particular test taken at this time. It's the spring of. So I can download information about other testing periods, but this is for spring results of.
But there are MCAS makeup days, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
they don't go into the same path. Wow.
No.
It depends, if they can, perhaps on one day, and
Right.
can't in the window, they can make it up, but if they had COVID and they missed the window or something, they have to take the next, another time, so it wouldn't be in that.
Right.
So it's only like a 5-day window then? Is that?
No, it's a bigger window, but it kind of depends on the circumstances, it's just been trickier because of COVID.
I have a message from Peter.
Sorry.
We both can't talk, so he's texting me. We can absolutely break down which students are not yet meeting standards, and they are overwhelmingly our high need students. And it is in those areas that we need to bolster our resources. He already has the data ready to go for ELA.
That's what I was gonna say too, like the budget is, the big increase is on our behind the students, right? So for a taxpayer to look at that and say, well, what are you gonna do with that money? Well, for this is what we're gonna do with that money, we have to meet the needs of the students. Yeah, it's all about the growth, right? So we
Right.
are creating.
So, so this is the last slide for the 8th grade. Again, the test item analysis, how we work with the data, looking at, what was that question? I mean, our eyes are always drawn to what can we do better? What was that question? What was the content area? Where is that lesson? How is that lesson taught? What type of question is it? The questions are twofold. There is a content component and there is a science skill component. So every question on the Science MCAS has 2 parts to it. So you have seen this slide before. This was one of Peter Doherty's, the first slide he showed. It is the Tonto, the biology MCAS. It was the first year the next gen scoring was rolled out. And so this graphic and this graphic represents the same test. Old scoring reflected, next gen scoring reflected, and it clearly says a different, tells a different story, looks different. I want to be this school. I don't want to be this school. It is the same test, same students, same wrong answers. But it is now how the state is presenting the data. So this, is new. This is the first year for my students. And again, I have to, kind of reiterate that this is new, and I've been teaching blind for the past 2 years with this. So, they rolled out this information slowly this year. This is a side-by-side comparison of the next gen. So this is how the state is doing, and this is how Tonto students did on the, it says grade 10, but it's anyone who's enrolled in biology takes the biology MCAS if they've completed the full course. And so we have 9th and 10th graders. And so our district, 79%, and we have 80%. These numbers are different. It's very strange. I can pull this information and get these reports, very tidy. And then there are different, slightly different numbers, and I don't know why they're calculated in a different way. But so we had 75 students taking it, 13 students exceeded expectations as per that data. So we have 62%, 47 students meeting, and then 17 partially meeting and 3%, 2 students not meeting. So 79% of our students exceeded or met expectations, whereas 47% of the state exceeded or met expectations. Addressing the 2 students identified as not meeting expectation. There's only 1 student who actually did not meet expectations. We know that the biology test is a language-based test. There's a lot of vocabulary, there's a lot of language, and it is very difficult for ELL students to navigate that. And the other not meeting is a heartbreak for me because it was an incredibly successful story that is reflected as not meeting. And that was a very successful, very beautifully put together portfolio assessment that passed, which is really difficult. It's very difficult to put together portfolio assessments and have that passed through the state. It was, but in our scoring, it is identified as not meeting. So that's sad for me. So this is the final report. So this is if you break down the information and download the report, achievement analysis by year. This is all of the same Edwin Analytics. This is the other, so the report that is sent out in district comparison, this is the data that's reflected. 81% of the students, and now I don't know where they get the 81 because the previous slide said 80 and 79, but this is the same DEIS Edwin Analytics, and this is the information that is in the district comparison. So it's 81% students are meeting or exceeding expectations as compared to 45% as the state average. Tohoto SDE next steps. So we reviewed the standards report, item analysis report, and released questions. We asked ourselves, are there any areas that need to be strengthened in content or in skills? We reviewed data prior to each unit and identify activities that will promote greater understanding, particularly in areas identified by the item analysis report. Identifying models that are used as illustrative examples for each unit. This is really important. Students really need to be able to look at models and be able to use models and apply their knowledge to the models and then apply those models to new situations, which is a complicated series of events for them to do. And so we want to incorporate these in similar models. I was in the middle school classrooms and they were doing just that. We integrate new question styles and previously released exam questions this year. High school biology can do that. We've been doing that at the middle school level. We're using DEIS reports as guides for creating classroom experiences. There are links here to understand what those are, but those are prescribed best practices within the classroom that have been identified as, goals for what our classroom should look like. We schedule 8th grade review sessions prior to the MCAS where there's, review sequences that happen in the classroom, and then I address the high school review sessions.
The discrepancy, and I knew this and I was going to get your attention, the discrepancy between 1% here and there is district versus school. School are the students that are in front of us. District are all students who take the MCAS, whether, if they're from our towns, whether they're homeschooled, they're outplaced, those students are included in our district graphs on DESE. So if you choose school or you choose district when you're creating the graphs, that's the difference in the 1%.
Right.
Because those students are included in our district numbers.
Right. Highlights for high school, MCAS Tohoto High School Biology MCAS scores are 15th in the state for students meeting and exceeding expectations. I think that's a great statistic to use. We are in the top 5% among the 302 school districts in the state. Results by standard, this helps us provide some information and analysis in look-fors. So now, any questions on science? Okay. I'm sure we'll hear from Peter. Tohoto Regional ELA results, this is 6, 7, 8, and 10. So the 10th grade, same graphic that we've been looking at for all the content areas. We see that, again, that our students are meeting and exceeding and expectations. Interesting, so this was our hybrid year, and so that is a wonderful reflection of, that our students were engaged. Our students were engaged. So yes?
Just a really basic question. Do we report grade 11 as well?
They don't have MCAS. So grade 10 or high school biology is if you're in the course. when you're in a course. And then there's 10th grade math and 10th grade ELA. They have to pass those MCAS in order to get a diploma. And then, so if there's remediation or there's retakes, that would happen in grade 11, and hopefully they would worry about it in grade 12, because they're.
Anything you learn. I'm kidding. I get it. Makes sense. Thank you.
This is a great graphic as an overview for grade ELA. We do kind of stress that because there's so much growth that happens over the course of the history of their math and the history of their English. There is growth that is being seen, whereas science is just simply a snapshot of that one content area. We have grade 6 ELA. We see, what is, wonderful to see is that, achievement levels have not, they're about the same. They're getting close to where they were back in 2019. And I think that's important. We are showing our school and district versus the state. So again, our exceeding and meeting expectations are above that of the state.
So on 6th grade here, this is the one we looked at last year. Last year was in 5th grade. And I see in 2022, it's still, all the other ones are pretty close in 2019, but that one looks out of whack. And I know when we looked at the 5th grade scores last year, they also seem like all higher. So is this grade seeing improvement as they improve? This class, I should say.
I would have to look back.
And we can see growth. I think there's, growth percentages. And the 7th grade ELA, we're seeing
Usually you see composite of the same kids, right? And how their scores change year to year.
Yeah,
And I think
fifth grade
it's-
last year, we saw those. The big one. That's before COVID, we started school, maybe not.
No, but they were impacted.
Yeah. Yes, and that would be interesting.
Peter says his growth chart will answer his question.
Right, yes, exactly. So, this is a snapshot of each of the grade levels, but then we'll see growth, and that's really, that's what's important, is to see individual student growth. And that is the resource that, you and Peter have been building. So we can work in a vertical alignment and, really see a student's growth over time from when they enter school till, 10th grade.
And Peter has a database that he's built that tracks each graduating class. And he said that he can share them with you if you'd like him to.
And grade 8 ELA, again, looking at, increased growth, increased confidence. I think that's really, again,
Back to pre-COVID.
And back to pre-COVID levels. Growth distribution, and I think this is the same thing we're seeing, increased growth over time. And this, again, also, so this achievement and growth, so this is where the 10th graders are, and this is how growth, student growth percentile and achievement moves over time. And our students are moving towards higher achievement and higher growth throughout the years that they are here, and that's really what we want to see. And I think this graphic for both math and ELA are the most important that we see, because we're seeing that they are becoming really strong students over time. They are building a foundation in both math and ELA. And and I can actually speak to this. Have had so many students who have graduated, who've come back and said, I was so well prepared in college. I could write better than any of my peers, and they could navigate, their math and sciences courses with ease. And I think that speaks volumes to, what's happening. This, again, is our test item analysis, what we look at, what all of the department chairs look at when initially doing curriculum planning and mapping, looking at those test items. Highlights, grade 10 highlights, we're 24th in the state for student growth percentile, 28th in the state for the percentage of students in exceeding and reading combined. That puts us in the top 10% of the schools in Massachusetts for both growth and achievement. And this, again, is based in the 302 districts that are identified in the database. What is the ELA department doing? They are examining MCAS and other data to identify specific areas of need at all grade levels, determine 3 primary areas of need in all grades, which will become power standards for ELA, for the ELA department. So this would be in alignment, 6 through 12, writing, topic development, reading, identifying the function of literary techniques and text, identifying connecting evidence from multiple sources, and language, identifying parts of speech and their function in text. And this will all impact, how they're writing in math, how they're reading and writing in science. Continue to meet the administration at all levels for vertical alignment, and continue to update ELA curriculum to ensure all major assessments are in line with state standards. We build an MCAS Google Classroom for the ease of access to data, especially over time, and building reports for curriculum analysis 3 years that the state does not have available. This is a huge amount of time that is being spent doing this, and is really valuable to the district in work that is important. Does Peter have anything to say? I know, and I kind of been blocking the.
You said his internet is like.
Okay, any questions on that? And there's links for different things that you can use. And anything, any questions, we're available by email. Please feel free, to reach out. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go. I'll be done in 20 minutes. Yeah. You can leave that plugged in, that would be good.
Oh, this, do you want me to, right? No, this is the HDMI.
Yeah.
Yep, right here. Oh, and just as they're setting up, if I could, just for a moment, I know that we talk about, we do talk about how the staff, how teachers and administrators support students in success. I would also like to suggest that we encourage our parents towards supporting our students. And I think there are a couple of areas they can encourage their students to, if they are struggling, they know that they're struggling, they would encourage their students to attend remediation work. I also think is really important for content areas in MCAS, for parents to understand the impact of having students attend school on scheduled days within the calendar year, to attend coursework, missing, so weeks at a time can be missed, and we can't help when you are sick. But there are some circumstances that absolutely can be navigated around, and I would hope that the school committee encourages families, especially the students who are in MCAS years, to attend school during their calendar time. That is really important. It's really hard to catch up those students when they miss a week or so.
I'm curious to, like, you know, vacations, I think is what you're alluding to, but also, like, with those prolonged absences for COVID, I didn't know if home and hospital tutoring was looked into.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There is absolutely, and I've done that. I've done that type of tutoring. But I think that it would go a long way to have, you know, the support from all levels and not to have the burden lie completely on the teachers.
Very
Good.
Okay. I don't know about this, come on, man.
I resisted the urge to put my little Buffalo Bills logo. Find the Buffalo Bill logo. Thanks, Mrs. Ailes and I are gonna attempt to live up to the standard that was set. But I want to take a second before we start, to echo your comments around parent participation. What we always find when we do stuff like this, the children who consistently do extremely well, but the children who have parents are consistently invested and involved. And the reality is that it's really hard in some families to do that, and that's why we're here, and people should feel free to reach out, because that's important. We know as teachers, it doesn't matter what's happening at home, it's still our job to teach all the kids. Yeah, that involvement. I get it about vacations and that once in a lifetime trip to Disney. Gosh, it makes it hard when the once in a lifetime trip happens twice a year. So just a couple. We're gonna kind of go in reverse order to what was, I wanted to echo one more thing for Mr. Doherty's benefit, who's probably still listening.
Oh, absolutely.
He lives for my presentation. It's rare in talking with my colleagues at the elementary level, the kind of relationship that we have with the middle high school, where we talk about how the kids are doing in 4th grade and how that impacts how they're going to do in 10th grade. And I've really enjoyed my work, especially this year with Peter around English and language arts, which you all know, and you all heard me go on and on about. And I'm going to go on and on again tonight, even though somebody's hogged a lot of the time. She told me 20 minutes. 20 minutes. So we'll start with language arts. I also wanted to just recognize really quickly Joey Flournoy, our math coach, who is here to correct us when we make mistakes.
Yeah, he's my backup.
That's what he does. I'm going to present ELA. Mrs. Ailes is going to do math. We'll come back to me for a little bit of science. We'll take your questions. You've got my report, so I'm not going to go into the same level of detail as my high school friends did. But if you have questions as we go along or at the end, that's fine. Really quickly, one last thing before we start. I've told this staff, going to give you some assessment thoughts. MCAS testing does not measure the worth of children or teachers or schools. It is one test given at one point in time. It gives us a snapshot, a word I heard you use several times, of where we are relative to standards and other students in the Commonwealth. And then finally, what we can learn from MCAS assessment is we can look for patterns and patterns. And that's why it's so frustrating when we don't get all the questions from the test. The states, they don't give us all the questions that they use because they use them again and say something. But we can look over time, and I know Peter's doing a ton of work with that. And kind of some of the work what I've done is just dovetailing off of what he's doing. English language arts, these are the spring results. We're going to look at the results over time. This is this year for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. The blue is Berlin, the red is Boylston, green is the state. You can see that we have by and large exceeded the state average, which is the baseline, it's the threshold, it's what we expect. We should be able to do better than Worcester and Springfield and Framingham, because we are better supported, both by parents and financially, beautiful schools. It was a very successful year for 3rd grade in Berlin. This is Tucker, who is probably not watching, but should, because she did just an amazing job getting her kids ready. This is just this year. I'm going to remind people, these 3rd graders Last year we're hybrid, the year before that, we're in once we close down. So to kind of get back to this level is really nice. The state gives us different answers or different results for MCAS. They look at it by grade level and they'll give us the entire school. This says our whole school meets or exceeds average for English language arts, all 3 grades, 3, 4, and 5, over the last, it's really 6 years, because there's that COVID year. Already with the budget.
Well,
Yes, ma'am.
I reviewed the data beforehand,
Excellent
so
job.
I'll bring it up once. It seems to be a trend for this year, and as a BES parent,
Yes.
it's clearly concerning the gap between the 2 schools. I assume the curriculum is the same, so I assume the kids are learning the exact same things. So I guess my question is it the group of kids, going back to what Mike said, are there more higher need kids at BES versus Berlin? Do we know why? Is this just, I think,
So
what
what-
I'd like to see is a bridge between that gap.
What you're gonna hear me say over and over is, it's not, we're not gonna blame the kids for tires.
No,
And I'm going to challenge a little bit. I think that we have some of the same curricular tools, but I think that we're just now starting to bring teachers together in terms of how we use those tools. I'll argue that in Berlin, we adopted earlier.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, more focus on phonics, more focused approach to the use of literature that supports early reading, and some work in writing. And I think that in Boylston, we're kind of stepping up to that.
Correct.
Fair.
And I think part of what, not to step on
Nope.
ELA toes, John, but part of what we have discussed as we've gone through this is the idea that we have raised the expectations at BES, not only for behaviors, but also for academics. And so now there's no doubt the students can continue to meet those expectations, but it's about setting the scene. It's about setting ourselves up for success when we look at this kind of testing. And the other thing that John spoke about was the early adoption of BMS to the ELA curriculum. That has really put us not behind, but it's a learning curve, and it has to do with professional development. It has to do with time that our teachers are getting to learn new material, specifically with our high needs students. It has to do with our special ed teachers having professional development time to be able to learn other ways to teach students the skills that everybody else is learning. So it really does have to do with that comfort level of the material. And that is what I think we will automatically see that growth as we look at test scores for years to come.
Step on it, or?
I know, I'm sorry, I warned you. I warned you.
I was getting there.
I'm sorry. Okay, just gonna sit back down. Mrs. Skrill asked a question, I had to answer it.
Yes.
Well, this is good. I just want to make sure, and you know, this goes to Carol too. As a school committee, we've talked about this multiple times. You know, one district, the kids are all together at the Hondo. And it hasn't been one district for long, but we need to,
I was looking at the data up here.
yeah,
Pre-regionalization.
I know,
What's going on there?
Well, exactly.
Right there, 2019 is when, 2021 is when it flipped.
That's what I'm saying.
We have not been one district.
2018.
For a long time.
Right,
But,
a couple of years, and we had COVID, so I get it.
I mean, COVID,
But I think as long, I guess the point I'm trying to make, I'm not like saying, shame on you, you guys stink, what are you doing, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying, this is a great reminder of how we, all of us, need to work to get this budget, the district improvement plan, us sitting here in these meetings discussing this, we need to, you know, obviously Tohoto is one school, so there's no differentiation between which town the kids live in. But when we're talking elementary schools, I would like to make sure the curriculums are equal. We have the same tools at BES that BMS has. We have the same resources. We have the same level of teachers. So if we have, you know, step 10 teachers and all in the third grade, then we've got the entry-level teachers at BES. I mean, there's differences, so I just want to make sure it's on the radar.
One of the reasons that when we look at the curriculum director's job, Carol and I talked about me taking a more direct approach at the elementary level is that it's a unique animal. It's a very different set of learning circumstances than somebody who's experienced it in the middle high school. So I think that one of the things we'll be able to do is I'll have some time to kind of dig deeper into that. But one of the things you're going to hear from me, you've already heard, you're going to hear it again, until you say yes. We're asking teachers to teach in a different way. We're asking teachers to take what they know about teaching and reading and kind of set it to one side. They were taught, and they're still being taught in some of the UMass schools, that the magic to reading is simply to get children beautiful books, and they sit with their flashlights, and they read them, and it's magic, and they learn how to read. And it turns out that doesn't work. There's a great podcast called Sold the Story, and one of the people was being interviewed said over and over again, we forgot to teach kids to read. That's the important word that we have to do. You can't read The Outermost House with Mr. Doherty. We don't teach them to read. So that's our goal. That's what we're working on. Here's real quick, because I swore I was going to dilly-dally with this. This is 3rd grade. This is 4th grade. This is 5th grade. And I will tell you, there was a webinar with the Commissioner of Education. They were talking about the MCAS results. And the concern was, especially in language arts, that there was a consistent dip from previous years, that they were specifically relating to COVID. And you can see it in all of those graphs where everybody went down from 21 to 22. Part of 21, remember, was half the test. So there was that piece. The other piece is that with language arts, you've got to be practicing it all the time. So there's that too. So that's what they look like. And this is, again, over the last 6 years, something that Mr. Doherty and I have been working on a lot, is that look over time. Now, this is not the same cohort. It's not the same group of kids. And right now, I can't do same group of kids because my 5th graders had half a test last year and no test the year before. It'll take a couple more years before we can start to look at cohorts. But he's already doing it like right straight through 10th grade. So there's that. You've heard me talk before about writing, and it's something the commissioner specifically mentioned, that the writing scores were way down. They've changed for like the 100th time how they report out writing. This year they only did the essay development part of the writing prompt for the MCAS test in English language arts in 3, 4, and 5. It used to be there was a part where they looked at their ability just to write, grammar and punctuation, conventions, and then essay idea development, which is how you answer the question. Do you have a beginning, a middle, and an end to your story, for example? And you can see our kids and kids across the state are still struggling. This is 3rd grade, and it's Berlin Boylston, and then the state average, same thing here, where the numbers are essentially the same. This is 5th grade. Again, we had a little more luck in Berlin than they did in Boylston. It's an area of growth. I've been talking about it for a couple of years.
Well, that's good.
Yes. Because that's my goal. Are there any questions about the ELA section?
All right, well, since you all reviewed the data, this is going to be equally as fast. So we are talking about the spring results, and obviously Mr. Campbell and I discussed the fact that I was not with you then, but there are still some overarching conversations that we're having with elementary teachers that I think are important. When we talk about math performance, I'll go on this side so I'm not on the camera. When we talk about math performance, it really does stabilize. I think that John just alluded to that in terms of the ELA scores. That's not something that we see. But when you are looking at the scores across time, you see that it's on that upward trend. So that was something that we expected.
And Mrs. Ailes, can you go back for 1 second?
Oh, yes, John,
See?
I will.
let me step out for now.
Oh, I like this. Oh,
So I
partners.
just wanted to point out, because I know that Deb Julius is our third grade math teacher in Berlin. I mean, you guys know that in Berlin, in third, fourth, and fifth grade, we kind of departmentalize. One person teaches math, one person teaches language arts. 88% of our third graders last year never exceeded the expectations for math. It's the best number, elementary number, the district has ever had. And I know that Mrs. Julius, who's retiring at the end of the year, is just wildly proud of her kids. And I wanted to point it out to all of you because I'm wildly proud of her. She's just an amazing teacher who has a knack with talking math with young kids. So I'm sorry, I should have said
No.
that. The 80, I really wanted to.
No, that's fantastic. And actually, it brings up a point that, John and I are always talking with Carol about, how things are happening at BMS and things are happening at BES and what is different and what's the same. And the idea that there's departmental, having one teacher teach math and one teacher teach ELA, these are all things that come into conversations that we have about what's best for kids at what age level. So we talked about the rise here in the math scores over time, and I want to address that thought that we were talking about earlier, Megan, about BES in comparison to BMS. And I think even when we're looking at scores like this is grade 3 math, and we see that upward climb, we still see that BES has lower score than BMS. One of the things that we have worked with Joey Flournoy on is the expectation of time on a subject area, the expectation of time on math specifically, and how we are looking at schedules and making sure that we can have blocks of time dedicated to that topic, to that subject area, so that students have 60 minutes a day of math. And it is not something that sort of gets bounced around with a time frame every day. That's really important in terms of consistency. Grade 4, you can see the dip. I mean, this is the hybrid, right at 2021. So you see a little dip there, but again, that trajectory is going back up. So I'll be curious to see continuing with some consistency. The other thing that we did at BES in 5th grade this year was we minimized the amount of transitions that are happening for students. So rather than switching to 3 different teachers, they are switching to 2 teachers, and they are having all of their main core content taught by their homeroom teacher. And so we were looking for ways to systematically approach their ability to swap, a code switch from one topic to another, from one teacher to another, and things like that, using what we know about students to be able to address some of these issues. But overall, our conversations and the thoughts that we have to do with the amount of rigor, the rigor that we are expecting, the expectations we have about the time that teachers are spending on topics, and the conversations we're having is about whether or not it's the school of thinking that you just say it's one day, it's one test, which I know that we saw that at the beginning, those expectations, but also at what point are we preparing our students so when they get to the day of the test, the stress of approaching something that they've never seen before and what it looks like, that doesn't overtake them and cast a shadow over their curriculum knowledge and their content knowledge. And so the things that we've been talking about are, how does that look in technology class? How does that look for us preparing them? Like we talked about a couple of meetings ago, the typing.com. So was that for me?
No, it's me.
Okay. I mean, I know I can be long-winded, but again, so we're analyzing the scores. I talked to a teacher this afternoon and she said, I just want to know what it is. And I was thinking about the scatter plot, and it was like your eye goes right to the spot where you think, what is that question about? For us, it has a lot to do with geometry and some areas that we can look at and think about more. And I think the teachers are just anxious to get these, they're always anxious to get these results and sort of pore over them and see what we can do better. Do you have any questions about this? These are so good. Mr. Campbell, science already. They didn't even have any questions.
That's because the report was so fabulously
It's
written.
so fabulous and comprehensive.
And comprehensive, and lovely, and
Yes.
with nice pictures. Very quickly, so I mentioned this earlier. 5th grade, MCAS science, these are the kids who were hybrid last year and remote the year before towards the end. So the results aren't super surprising. This is this past year's 5th grade, current 6th graders. Berlin just beat the state average. Boylston did much better. Obviously not where we want to be. If you look at the overall trend, kind of flat. It's kind of, there's not a whole lot of improvement. And you go back to what you pointed out, why we ask for more money. I think this is part of it. It's not so much because I want them to have a better science and technology MCAS result, but I want them to respond better in testing situations so that they're thinking about more than just the easy, obvious answer. We have to teach kids to be better problem solvers. To do that, we have to teach them to think a little bit differently, and we have to, I know, being a dead horse, we have to teach them to read deeply and more effectively so that they actually understand the question that they're trying to answer. Thanks.
Go back to math now.
Oh, sorry, Joseph, anything you want to add? Mr. Floor, anything you want to add?
Just wanted to go back and talk about math more. That was the fun part.
Question, first of all, thanks for parsing all this data together for everybody. It's a lot of work, I understand. And kudos, it's really nice to see the numerous areas where the district is doing really well, and the vast majority of kids are meeting or exceeding expectations. Just a question, we brought up the COVID kids a few times, right, throughout this. I wonder, that's an acute situation, we hope, right?
Yes.
Where we've got.
One that will resolve more quickly, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, do you think it would make sense, or maybe are you already looking at those groups of kids in composite? Kind of like we talked about before, so they don't get lost in the years. And just ensuring that those kids, like the last slide you showed, John, are progressing, and we're watching those years specifically, year over year. Are we giving them the support they need so that they can catch up?
There was a group of kids who, you might remember the Bridge program. When we were, when we were remote and then when we were hybrid, whose parents did not want them back in the building. And we paid a ton of attention to those kids when they first came back. It was very heavily Boylston kids, rather than Berlin kids. But we watched all of them over the last year to kind of see what the impact was like. And they caught up fairly quickly. They are not my concern at this point. It is much more that cumulative loss of knowledge. Now, you've heard me say in other years, math is ruthlessly cumulative. You have to learn A before you can understand B. And it grows over time, but it's easier to catch up because you can't do B until you learn A. So just take kids where they're at and then start to move forward so that they don't drive themselves crazy when they get to high school. Language arts is a little more challenging because it's a thought process. And I think there we're seeing more of a challenge in terms of kids' social emotional well-being. They're still growing back into school. I'm still seeing, I won't speak for you, but I know when we talk about it, we're seeing those behavioral changes still, where there are kids, especially our younger kids, we've got kids in our school still, this is their first real experience with full-time school. And they're not letting all this roll. So we're still trying to grow them into that while we keep working on the bigger picture. I think that's part of why you saw those dips a little bit, a lot.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I just wonder if, and again, perhaps you're doing it already, but if you have a special or a couple of special charts that focus on those kids, right? That, where it's really clear and we're able to just connect the dots from their earliest experience in school through current to make sure that they're accelerating.
Ms. Costello?
Yeah, I wanted to add, this is where the benchmark assessments come from, you know, the Ames Web results. That's what they're looking at, those results, to catch those students' progress, monitoring one year. In addition, since that's been happening for a couple of years, we've gotten Ames Web data. But after that, what they're doing now, so Joey is part of a team. They used to go separately into schools and do the Ames Web testing. I think it was by the teachers, right? The teachers.
Yes.
Now they have a team in the two schools going together to give those Ames Web assessments. They're finding, right? We were just talking about this with Stephanie, so much quicker.
The initial reports, especially from teachers, because we would do it building-based, so you'd have myself and the tutor trying to do all of the math. You'd have the same on the LA side, and then, the same two people doing a bigger school over there at the time. And it was taking weeks and weeks, and I was part of that bridge program when we had to do the Ames Web online, and that took, I think in some cases, like 3 to 4 weeks to get all that done. So what we've done this time is we have all 6 people, both coaches, both tutors in both schools. We did yesterday and today, and we've so far, I don't know.
Knock on wood, that was
Everything is going remarkably, and the teachers have enjoyed it because whereas it was like, how many kids can I take throughout several days? We came in and we can come into your class for an hour. In most cases, it was less, it was 30 minutes. We were there, that was it, and you're done with us. And so that's, one teacher told me yesterday, kudos to the team that we put together, because she could sit there and she just did a read aloud book for 15 minutes, and we were done with their kids, which normally would have taken several days of working around the lunch and everything else. We just scheduled it out and said, here's what we're gonna do.
So
It's
you
made a
guys
huge difference.
can get the data faster, right? So they have a chance to really look at that and see what they need.
And it's more accurate.
It's more
Oh,
accurate, right?
absolutely.
It's more timely. The other piece I would say to that, Joe is also looking during PD day, he's working with fifth and fourth grade and third grade teachers, I think, on the assessments that they're giving, just the assessments through the program, making sure that they're giving the same assessment to the students by unit, so that they're not eliminating certain questions, that they're all doing the same questions, they're all the same.
Now you've opened up math conversation. Because, it's not quite 9 yet. So the thing about Ames Web is just about, for math, it's just about the number sense. There's the concepts and applications piece to it that shows sort of the broader pictures of math, its shapes, its times, its positions, whatever. But the bulk of it is about that number sense. So Ms. Costello is right. The last several years, we've been working with 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. You'll be happy to know we're taking these tests. They're taking these tests online. We're still teaching them how to do the work on paper, because one of the things we just actually were focusing on in the 2nd grade was these kids will do the work on the paper, but as soon as you see them, have them work on the computer, click, 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 click. So what we're focusing on is how can we get them to still slow down and show that work before they do the clicking. So this year, because we've worked 3, 4, and 5 for several years now, this year we added 1st and 2nd grade. The expectation is that we're all giving that digital assessment, and it's been going really, it's a learning curve, but they're getting that exposure now, and they're able to fine tune the way that we're approaching it. So that's the skills base that we're talking about.
I think just by going around as a team, sending a message, we're all in this together, that's a mental shift for 2 schools who are operating very differently. For as long as I've been here in this district, and they're seeing, hey, we have these 2 people now in place, Joey and Stephanie, they're bringing those schools together, and they're saying, John started earlier with this literacy shift that you'll hear about across the nation now, with the science of reading, a total shift away from balance of literacy, balance reading. That was so big, Baptism now, and all that. We were all, it was trained in that too. Now, Stephanie's over in Boylston on top of this with the teachers. So it's going to happen gradually, but it is happening. The training's happening. The choices we're making around resources are happening. And the message that we're 2 schools, but we're all doesn't matter where you're landing, which school you're landing in, you're going to get the same instruction. So
I love that.
yeah, that's a piece to your, what you were saying, like, and I think I don't like to see that either. I mean, that.
You won't be prepared to go to high school together. You'll have kids that are at a disadvantage if you don't start kids, so.
Well, it used to be the other way
In the
around.
LA too, they're working together. Lisa's going over, right, and is gonna be working with the fifth grade teachers during the next PD day to say, here's what to expect with these science, let's look at these standards you're gonna have on your science tests in fifth grade. Here's what you should be teaching, here's how you should be teaching it. That hadn't happened before. So
That's great.
there's lots of shifts happening in that space too.
We have traditionally shared input middle of the year scores with this group. Feel free to invite us back. Fabulous slides. Good job this next week, because you kind of, it's a different look. Again, it's a point in time, it's another data point that we got to go on. So, ready to come back and talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, brings us to business items. We bring this to discuss and vote here. So first up, we have a motion to approve the elementary school principal and elementary curriculum coordinator job description. Julie?
Second.
Megan? Any discussion? Questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? All right, a motion to approve the school principal description. Julie? Jess is the second. Any questions or discussion? All for it?
Aye.
Against? All right, passes by vote. A motion to approve middle high school assistant principal job description.
So moved.
Megan?
Second.
Julie? Any discussion, questions? All for it?
Aye.
Yes? Three, all right, approved. Motion to approve Director of Curriculum and Grants job description.
So moved.
Bob?
Second.
Julie? Any questions or discussion? All right, all for it?
Aye.
Yes? None, motion passes. Here we are, motion to accept the donation of $159.83 from Clinton Savings Bank to BES Library. Julie?
Second.
Bob? Any questions about this? This is going to the library for books or something?
Mrs. Sutton, on behalf of Mrs. Sullivan, thank you.
All right. All for it?
Aye.
Yes? None, motion passes. Motion to approve the school committee annual report to the towns.
So moved.
Megan? Second?
Second.
Julie? Any questions?
I've got some questions.
All right.
So thanks for sharing this, I guess, yesterday. Who wrote this report?
This is a combination, I took one from 2020 or 2019, which I believe was written by Jim, and updated for this year.
Okay. So a couple of things I would, I'm gonna recommend we kick it back, Mike.
Just how the town's gonna ask for it by next week.
No, January, so the day after Martin Luther King holiday, so that's the 17th.
Next week.
17th, I think.
Okay.
That's a week from today.
Nonetheless, I'm still gonna recommend that we kick it back. A couple of things I think we need to change.
Okay, what do you got?
So, in general, I think just from the tonality of it, I'm not sure, I think we might be spending a little more time talking about election results and less time about the plans we have, and the good work we started and the vision we created over the last year. I'd love to see that highlighted a bit more. And specifically, I just think the language around Dr. Henry's departure could be improved. I think that's not something I want to sign my name up to, frankly. And then,
Anything specific?
under organization, page 1, first sentence, after Dr. Susan Henry abruptly quit the committee in January 2022, I think that's intended to be a comment for that. I don't think that language abruptly quit is appropriate for this kind of document. Similarly, it's referenced again in the attendance sheet where she's referred to as quit January 2022. I just,
How would you describe her actions?
Resign?
Abruptly resigned? Okay.
I don't think the word abruptly adds anything of value, to be honest. It conveys a
It was fairly abrupt.
Indeed, but
It's
is
not
there a
appropriate for an
2-week
annual report.
notice that's?
It's irrelevant. She left.
Okay.
She resigned on a date and was replaced.
She was replaced. She resigned for one day before a key meeting.
Nonetheless, I don't think it belongs in an annual report. This attendance chart here, is this something that was done in 2019 as well?
It's, everything in here is taken directly from previous reports that were written as a template.
Okay.
Things that related to those years were taken out, things that related to this year were put in. I hear your point on the 3-year plan. I don't know that that fits necessarily into this report, only because that's a separate report by itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think a summary would be appropriate for an annual report. There's a big milestone we achieved for 2022. And then just on the attendance chart, Mike, I'm not sure if the numbers for me specifically are a typo, but that's not accurate.
The numbers are from Christie.
So this is from June, we did have a meeting in July, and I just took them from the meeting minutes.
Yeah, I was scratching my head on that one, Christie. And no offense to you, Jess, but I think I've been to more meetings than you, just because I've been around for a bit longer. I counted 10 was the number.
You're welcome to go back and look at the minutes.
And I was
and
appointed
read
in
the needs
May.
of correction.
Say again?
I said you're welcome to go back and look at the minutes and look at the needs of correction.
Yeah, I did. I
Okay.
will. I will. I had 10 was the number I counted earlier today,
Okay.
and it was May. when I was appointed.
It was May, sorry.
I
Bob.
think, yeah, I think
I didn't check
counted
the
from
others,
June,
but
so.
My name still appears to be misspelled in 3 places
Which one?
on the attendance.
DI,
Where is it?
It's Digley Alberti, so
Oh, yeah, definitely.
ALB.
oh,
Yes, on your printed version, it is, but I fixed it before the meeting, so if you're looking at it on the drive, it's there. Yeah, it's-
The drive's still in. And that's true on the election results.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, election results. Yeah, I went through and they are all correct.
Oh, please. I don't know, I'm still looking at it on the drive.
Refresh.
he said refresh, he just fixed it. Oh. That's great.
Yeah, Carol's looking at it right now.
Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you.
All right, so Bob, you said you attended 10 meetings?
Yep. Put my count.
The election results, I'm still missing one, sorry.
Yeah, it's, you got a few extra.
On the election results, it is currently spelled
Delete the last L.
DEGLIALBERTI.
Excuse me, Christie?
Just TI at the end.
You said the town wants it
That's how
by
it is.
117?
That they request it annually by the day after the Martin Luther King holidays.
And is there, do you have any idea what that date is connected to?
Nope, that's just been, since I've been here for 7 years, that's been the day they requested.
I think they have to compile all of it, and they have to have it compiled so they can submit it to the voters, mail it out.
Yeah.
Remembering this. I thought Susan did one last year, no, Mike? It was
Uh,
very long.
Correct.
It was like
Yeah.
long, because I remember being there.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some good content in here. I think think it's an opportunity for the six of us to, share some of the triumphs and challenges that the committee has had in 2022. We've got plenty to talk about. I prefer we focus on the triumphs, of course. And I think, if time pressure were not a concern, I'd rather give some time for the committee to kind of.
Length is also a concern about I was instructed to keep it short,
Yeah,
so. that's why-
I'm with you. Yeah, no, I don't
You know,
think I.
It's
I would-
factual, it's who we are, who's running the schools. Some major things that are upcoming, like the budget numbers in there. The need to hire is in there, the superintendent is in there. And then the election is in there. One of the big things in last year's report was the work about leading up to the election, so the election results are in there this time around. And then it's the attendance of who's on the committee, so. Yes, we voted in a big plan, I wouldn't include that plan. I wouldn't include the plans like 100 pages, something like that.
District improvement plan?
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a 2023. Isn't that gonna be
Yeah,
for
'cause it's
this
also
coming
not
year?
really.
It certainly shouldn't be in here, but it might be an example of the ones to achieve. I get that this is how it's always been done.
The achievement related to the plans that was voted and approved that hasn't actually achieved anything yet. We expect it to. It's cracked it, yeah. You guys.
Oh,
have
yeah,
been
crafted,
putting in
that's
reports
good.
like that as well.
In fact, I usually have to
Yeah.
put in a report as an assistant superintendent, but
Yeah.
I'll see if I can combine that one. I will.
I think that's probably more. Where
That
that
will
would go.
include that.
So that's
Just give me my feedback.
Yep, I got you.
Could we change the verbiage from abruptly quit to resign?
Well, we have a motion on the floor right now to accept this. reports.
So I think if we just change it to resigned, instead of using the word quit, I'd drop abruptly, and then I would, I hear you, Bob, and Mike, I'm sorry, I know you asked Laurie and I for comment, and I took a look at the red stuff, and I'm like, oh, that looks good. There's only so much time, so I hear what you're saying, but this is like a report that goes to the town, and we're like hitting the pavement hard on the budget, so.
Sure.
So if you wanna
Yeah,
change that,
there's
then
only
we
so
need,
much time you can do on
if you want to
the
change that, then we need a motion to amend the report.
All right, so I'll make a motion to amend,
What's the current motion?
oh yeah, we gotta vote it down.
Yeah.
Ballot. All right.
Is it tracking?
He's like, it's 9:00, people. We gotta go home, go to bed.
Yes, the principals can.
Yeah, you guys, yeah. Leave, you're
You want
on.
to say the Regals thing now about the trip?
What's that?
I think it, are we talking about maybe you're thinking about the trip?
Yeah,
But that's just me, you know.
yeah, we'll,
feel like we're solid.
2 minutes, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so we need a motion for an amendment to
You
this
say-
report.
Do we need to vote this down first?
No.
Okay.
Amendment.
So all right, so I'll make a motion to amend the annual report to change the verbiage in the organization paragraph,
We don't have to vote. Complete the motion, that's all. Is that it?
because it's an amendment.
Amendment to the motion.
Is that correct, Christie?
I tried to do that already.
All right, so the motion is to amend the verbiage to say, instead of abruptly quit in the organization paragraph, just use the word resign. And then in the chart on page, the attendance page, remove the word quit and under Dr. Susan Henry's line.
All right, that's a full motion then, Christie, you got that?
Well, and then the 10.
And, yeah.
To the word resigned. All right,
And change Bob's attendance to 10. Okay.
change Robert Holmes' attendance to
Jesse's
10.
name's already,
We don't need to worry about typos, right? He fixed it.
not through amendment.
Not for amending a motion. He
They've
fixed
been
it.
fixed, check your cache or refresh your browser, but it's Carol's on my shoulder. It's changed.
In the
You got
attendance
the
as
May
well?
2022.
The attendance, yeah, May. All right, so that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Julie? All in favor, discussion?
spelling.
Yeah, they fixed it. They don't, for
Correct.
typos, they don't have to do an amendment.
Your
I
name,
just
I can assure you, your name is spelled correctly. If you'd like to come over here, we can go.
I would love to, yes, I'm sorry.
I know it's late, but maybe we should just slow down a little bit.
All right, here's the
Slow as
all
fast.
fine for just.
Smooth as fast.
Okay, wonderful. So I fresh orange things.
All right. All right. So that's the discussion. Is there all in favor of that amendment?
Aye. Aye.
All right, that passes. So now we have a motion on the floor to accept the report as amended.
So moved. Second.
And any other further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Um,
Against?
I'm sorry. I was meant to be on.
All right, motion passes, so the
Like-
report is accepted, all
Sorry.
right? The report as in the drive now, as amended, passes. Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Thank you. Go ahead.
How about H, motion to approve the overnight field trip for Tohoto Student Council to Cape Cod in March.
So moved. Second.
Julie, Megan, any discussion?
Did we not talk already?
Are you gonna read that? It's a different,
Yeah, so
it's
Sally.
a different trip.
Yeah, it's a
It's a
different.
different trip. Did you see it in the
Of course,
drive?
it's
Student council.
It's a student council trip. No, it was in the
You're
drive.
not gonna be reading that out in those house?
And then that other trip was the
Everyone's
interdisciplinary
lucky.
trip, but this is a school council trip.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, so they just sent me a couple paragraphs on the so this was sent to me by Dr. Kim Trainer, who's one of the advisors for the student council, and she said that they plan to have 12 students representing Tohoto while attending what's called the Massachusetts State Student Council Conference. This is in Hyannis from March 8th through the 10th. It historically has included 1,200 student leaders from over 85 schools in Massachusetts each year, and they have been in attendance. She usually goes along with Danielle Winker as the other advisor. They've both been going with this group since 2017. Last year, we had student Paige Money was one of the actual state vice president, and this year we have Shanley Evans going, and she is the state president, representing the entire state of Massachusetts High School Student Council. And she's also coordinating this entire event. The advisors attending with the 12 students, plus Shanley, which makes 13, are, like I said, Kim Trainer, and Megan Logan's going to be going in place of Mrs. Winker because she's out on maternity leave. They plan to leave on the 8th at 8:30 a.m. They're going to return Friday the 10th before 2. They're going to be staying at the Cape Codder and attend the conference during the day at the Hyannis Resort and Conference Center. And the school bus shuttles are provided between hotels for schools, and they're planning to travel down in one, hopefully with West Boylston Student Council, as they have in the past. The cost of the trip is approximately $350 to $375 per family, but if finances are a concern, Student Council will happily cover the cost so that students can attend, as finances should not be a deterrent. And then they did list a whole very long itinerary. That's a long.
It was on the drive.
It's a good summary.
It was on the drive, yeah.
No, Michael, I love it. But how are the 12 students? Are they upper class for the student council? John, you must know.
Where would Jack went?
Yeah.
I don't have the list, to be honest with you.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, they're typically.
Take it back.
Sophomore juniors.
Any other questions?
Great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? All right, motion passes. You guys can take off.
I got a question for both.
Back to G, motion to approve the request to dispose of obsolete and surplus items.
So moved.
Bob? Second.
Second.
Megan? Any discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Motion passes. Motion to approve an additional half FTE school teacher at BMS.
So,
Julie? All right. Bob?
Can I say something about something now?
Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Motion passes. Accept the donation, a motion to accept the donation for the BMS scoreboard, with details to be determined, which we have more of now.
It's so awesome. So moved.
Oh, sorry, you want to talk?
Megan, and a second is.
No, it's fine. So second, there's.
I know what you're gonna say, I've got the letter right.
Permit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chip is on the permitting, Durant.
Mhm.
So before anything, I know we had to get this approved first, and then we will, any permits that need to be presented will go to us or to you.
To the facilities manager. So what I would suggest, humbly suggest, as the building principal in Berlin, and we're delighted to have the sport work under, probably should have been put in when the building was like. But we have to, I mean, the enthusiasm sometimes of groups to get something done, they skip over, or they don't know about certain requirements like electrical permits.
Yep.
And this permit, and that permit. So the town doesn't get mad at me, because they will. If we could build into the motion pending the obtaining of all appropriate permits and permissions.
Yes, I have the letter here, it's in the drive, under votes, where they say they'll await approval by the various town, by the various parties who manage and operate the space here. But yeah, we should put an amendment in here, so.
Is it possible for our facilities manager to coordinate the permitting process? Would that be appropriate?
I don't think so, because it's not a district money.
No, it's a town.
Really?
I'm sure he'd be happy to like
Waiting
offer
for
it.
work, Bob.
Mr. Slow Down. Here we go.
Alright, so could we have a motion to amend this motion to include the language that Link Incorporated will coordinate all necessary permits and approvals?
I think the Berlin baseball / basketball group is coordinating this. Actually, I know they are. Even though it says Link, Link's donating the money,
Okay,
a portion of it, a large portion of it graciously.
Link and their partners.
Yep.
So a motion to amend to make sure that the Link Incorporated and their partners
Yeah.
coordinate all necessary approvals and permits.
I'm gonna second that.
You're gonna motion.
So moved.
You're gonna move.
Yeah.
Megan and then Julie. All right, vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
All right, passes 5-0. All in favor of the motion to accept the donation
Aye.
as amended, right?
As amended.
All right, motion passes. Okay, that's it for business items. Did we vote? We vote aye. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the one that you said aye, but I didn't say second.
All right, so this next piece here is something that was requested. Just a sort of open couple of minutes, if anybody wants to suggest anything for next time.
I indeed have a list.
Okay?
I.
This is the suggestion for consideration for future agendas. If it fits, nothing guaranteed, just feel free to talk.
Throwing it out there for future subcommittee agenda. So the first one is feasibility to restart the COVID dashboard for reported COVID cases in each of the schools. Hopefully to have discussions including the school nurses regarding the burden of tallying reported cases weekly, and also the school committee to maintain the dashboard is not to just burden the central office staff or nurses. The second one is increased openness for school nurses to remind parents on health protocols such as CDC recommendations for testing or return only after fever-free 24 hours, and weekly emails from principals, etc. The CDC updates this weekly data late Thursday, so it's just in time for Friday newsletters. Number 3, feasibility of home and hospital tutoring for students quarantining for COVID or other long-term illnesses, so as not to lose time on learning. Found like maybe at the high school that was happening. I don't know if at elementary school level that was happening. And I think you know, Christy, this. And then 4, better sound or tracking during the school committee meetings, and it's really hard to listen and actually hear what people are saying during the meetings. So I know I asked a little bit, but if we could look into better sounding for the meetings, for the recordings, that would be great.
I heard that somebody texted and said the audio is much better today. So I
I don't know, because they were speaking.
You're standing next to the camera.
That probably is the reason. The Boylston Library has an interesting thing, it rotates and it tracks speech. It's really
There's a
interesting.
number of systems like that
Yeah.
that are crazy money.
And then 5 is also for remote participation for school committee members or staff or admin for meetings that are live, given illnesses or other things within the MASC. There is words to allow remote participation for live meetings. So it would be great to be able to look into that possibility. If you were out for pneumonia, maybe you were out for COVID in the spring, so I think.
We did look into that when I had COVID because we had to literally cancel a contract, remember? And they pretty much said, no.
Who's?
It's against the state. It has to do with, I could have FaceTimed in, but FaceTime isn't secure. It had to be on Zoom.
That's
but,
because it was an executive session.
Oh, all right. So I don't know about
Any
that.
negotiation is an executive session.
Oh,
Yes,
so
that's a little
there's
different.
words.
So, yeah, so then
There
it
is
was.
words now that you can do it, as long as you say, I am in a secure location by myself, no one else can hear this.
For executive session, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
They cancel it when I had COVID.
I don't know, yeah, well, I went to the open, whatever the training was. So there is word in the MASC to allow that, so it would be great to look into that.
Good to know.
Anybody else?
I have one thought, not that we, want to extend the agenda, but, just the process of doing business as a committee like this, sometimes, my personal opinion, can be a little robotic, or it can be robotic to someone that's watching. And I think what I've heard from the community and what I personally feel is that, I think the community and those watching would benefit from seeing humans talk to each other about subjects, maybe a little bit more often in this forum. And so, I think we try to do that to the best of our ability within the bounds of the law, because there are some constraints there regarding open meeting law. But a suggestion would be to add a walk-in topics segment to our agenda. It doesn't have to be long, but a short period of time where we allow open discussion about ideas. Hey, should this go on next month's agenda or not? Or
So like what we're doing now.
well, I think you're asking for agenda items for next month. Yeah.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Christie, but anything that would get deliberated would need to be noticed as a public meeting?
Anything that's deliberated within a quorum, so that makes 4 of you, must be done in public
Understood.
With notice, right?
with 48 hours notice, not including weekends and holidays.
So if
It's like a walk-in topic to deliberate or make a decision on, would not be allowed.
yeah, I don't think it would be appropriate for making decisions, but just really trying to create an opportunity for us to deliberate, I guess, more openly and less, sometimes without as much focus, right? I mean,
We can say deliberate more openly. What's more openly mean?
discuss things, I mean, discuss pros and cons, weigh things openly before vote. I think we often come in, having reviewed data in advance and had our minds made up, and so it's great for continuity of the meeting, this is going to do this, bang, 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 we're pretty much aligned on most items when we come in. But I think the community would benefit from hearing us weigh pros and cons of different ideas, right? I mean, if we looked at our voting record, they're pretty consistent among voters in the committee, meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, which I think implies that there's not a lot of, weighing of items. So
beyond what we do now, which is ask questions and go back, what would we do? Because I think it's a good idea, what would we do?
well, I mean, my suggestion was to create an opportunity on the agenda to talk about items that have come up that maybe aren't ready for vote. And it sounds like maybe that's not really feasible to just sort of pop have an idea in our head.
And if they go on the agenda.
It would have to go on the
You'd have to
agenda.
be on the
If they
agenda.
go on the agenda, it's, which is why we're having this session. right
Yeah, it's
now.
not a criticism of how we run our meetings.
No,
It's
I'm just trying to-
an idea.
So
You have to understand open meetings, like, we're a government body, not, we come from
Yeah,
a corporate background.
talking about it.
We can move quickly. Which one thing I want to say to John is actually how quickly you guys are changing the way you're teaching. Getting to that one district idea. I like it, but in a corporate setting, you can move as quick as you want. This is town government, local government, open meeting law. We don't get to choose, we don't get to, those the laws we have to follow. So if we get on an agenda, then we can deliberate it, we can discuss it, we can do whatever we want.
I totally get, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I totally get where you and Bob and Jessica, I get where you're coming from, because when I started school committee last year, I was so fired up about how the process was. Like, oh, you have to do, it's like so rule-based, and you come in thinking, I'm gonna make such a big difference, and I have all these great ideas, and then you're like, wait a minute, nope, you're gonna break the law if you do this, and you shouldn't be talking about this, and da. So I totally get what you're saying. You just wanna like openly like solve problems. But like what Mike said, and Christy pretty much echoed it, like it has to be, because we've had people like breaking open meeting law, and I've done a ton of research, because now I'm paranoid about it, where people literally, I talked to an attorney, you can get fined up to $15,000. It's, you have to like walk a very delicate line with it. So I totally get what you're saying. It's so hard when the public comes in and they make comments, like I want to reply to them multiple times. I mean, especially we were all sitting on it during COVID with masking, and it was so hard to sit in that auditorium and listen to everyone talking, like, no, you're wrong, or yes, you're right, or whatever. But it's like, so I get what you're saying. I wish there was a better way.
I think
I
the
like
walking
this
topic
thing.
idea probably isn't gonna work, but I would
No.
encourage us to think creatively about how we can breathe a little air, breathe into our meetings.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think this thing at the last 10 minutes, of course, not when it's 9:30 at night, but, because then we're all fried. And that's another thing, I talked about, like, maybe we have a 2-hour limit, and then if we need another meeting, I'd rather come back and have another meeting. 'Cause honestly, like, after 8:30, I'm toast, like, I'm out, so.
They've gone through the Netcast a little quick. High school bills.
I think it's also a good idea to invite groups in, like I know the PTOs used to come.
We talked about that.
Once, I think that student groups to come in, the athletic director to come in, performing arts to come in.
And just let them know you'll be there for 30 minutes and have them go on at the beginning. Because I think the other thing is people see the meetings are 3 hours and they're like, I can't sit here for 3 hours. I mean, I see meetings are 3 hours and they're like, I can't sit here for 3 hours. So I think that's another thing is the length, but I love having 10, 15 minutes at the end where we can kind of like, so I know Jess, you want to peel open the whole COVID thing. So, and I have some thoughts on that. But again, tonight's not the time. It's not on the agenda. You and I can talk one-on-one, but we can't all talk as a group because that violates open meeting law outside of this meeting or outside of the next one, so.
I'm curious, like if something is said in the public comments, right, it has to align to something on the agenda. Is there a way to open that up because like this is opening different topics that might not be related to anything that we were talking about this meeting. So for the open comments at the beginning, I mean, is there a way to open that up for like different topics?
Well, it is a public group.
That's
Anybody-
a matter of policy, though. That is the school committee policy, that anything that's said in public comments must be related to something on the item on the agenda. So that's something that have to be looked at in policy. So
We can do that, and also anybody can contact us, email us at any point in time before a
Yes.
meeting. And if it's an important enough topic, then we can adjust the agenda
And then
before the meeting, before the,
Yeah, well, and because I was looking to Robert's rules, and you can amend, an unforeseen item can be, the agenda can be amended and added to. So I'm curious if that could happen after the open comments section?
Yeah, but I don't think that can be used just for any topic that someone might want to add that's not added.
no, you can't adjust an agenda after the meeting has been called to order.
So the way I read it, that you can make a motion, so would that have been before the Pledge of Allegiance then?
Before Meg calls the meeting to order, is my understanding that once that is done, the meeting is set.
All right, that's our 10 minutes, unless there's
All right.
something present.
No, I get it. I think is there a subcommittee that we can kick this to, or any policy, obviously?
Policy.
So opportunities at the end of each agenda item for public comment. I know like the timing of meetings, not just something to be discussed at a future meeting or.
We're already here, it's already
I
gone 3
understand
hours
that, but I do, as a public,
for the public to comment on each
So,
agenda
like,
item as we go through.
you know, like the public comments,
It's-
3 minutes. If you
It's the
have.
school committee meeting, it's not the public's meeting. They have an opportunity to come and make
Let's
comments.
let Jess like explain her
Yeah,
idea.
but I think if you have
I
like
get it,
1 minute
exactly.
time for questions or clarification, you know, I don't know if it would really
All
add
right.
that much time.
We'll consider it in the future, but we are past time. So could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Megan, second.
Second. Julie's car shining.
All for adjourning?
Aye.
Yes?
Aye.
Jess, I wasn't trying to cut you off to be rude, but just, we are.